What if Harry Potter discovered a hidden vault beneath Gringotts that contained every lost spell? Chapter 1, The Hidden Vault. Harry Potter kicked his office door shut with more force than necessary, ignoring the alarmed looks from Junior Aurors in the corridor. 6 years since the Battle of Hogwarts, and here he was, drowning in paperwork instead of actually protecting the wizarding world. The stack of incident reports on his desk hadn't shrunk all week. If anything, it seemed to be breeding overnight. "Brilliant," he muttered, tossing his wand onto the cluttered surface. It rolled across a map of London marked with glowing dots representing recent magical disturbances. A knock at the door interrupted his brooding. "What?" he snapped. Ron Weasley poked his head in, ginger hair now cut shorter for his role as tactical specialist in the Auror department. "Someone's in a mood," he said, stepping inside and closing the door. "Robards writing you again about the Nocturne incident?" Harry ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. 3 weeks of surveillance blown because I didn't get proper authorization to pursue. The suspect was literally casting illegal memory charms in plain sight. Ron dropped into the chair opposite Harry's desk. "Systems mental. But listen, there's something weird going on in East London. Multiple reports of magic that's not registering properly on the detection grid." "Not registering how?" Harry straightened, instantly alert. "That's the thing, it's showing up, but the signature keeps changing. Department of Mysteries is calling it unstable magical resonance, whatever that means." Ron tossed a thin file onto Harry's desk. "They're refusing to investigate, saying it's Auror jurisdiction since there might be criminal activity." Harry flipped through the report. 3 locations in the past week. And it's getting stronger each time. He stood up, suddenly energized. "This is exactly what I need. Something real." "Figured you'd say that." Ron grinned. "Already told Robards we'd handle it." He was too busy preparing for his ministry dinner to argue. 20 minutes later, Harry and Ron apparat into an abandoned warehouse district. The Thames flowed sluggishly nearby, carrying the smell of industrial waste and salt water. "Magical maintenance says the last disturbance was centered in that building." Ron pointed to a crumbling brick structure with most of its windows shattered. "About 6 hours ago." Harry nodded, already extending his magical senses. After years of Auror work, he'd developed a knack for feeling magical residue that even impressed Hermione. "There's definitely something, but it doesn't feel like dark magic. More like..." He frowned, struggling to find the right words. "Like an echo." They approached cautiously, wands ready. The warehouse door hung precariously from one hinge. Inside, dust covered everything except a clear path of footprints leading toward the center of the open space. "Someone's been here recently," Ron whispered, crouching to examine the prints. "Single person, moving with purpose." Harry moved ahead, following the trail to where it stopped abruptly before a section of concrete floor that looked no different from the rest. "It ends here." He knelt down, running his hands over the rough surface. Nothing visible, but the magical resonance was stronger here, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Revelio," Harry murmured, tapping his wand against the floor. Nothing happened. "Specialis Revelio," he tried again, with more focus. The concrete remained unchanged, but Harry's scar, dormant for years, gave a slight tingle. Not pain, just awareness. "Something's definitely here," he said, pressing his palm flat against the floor. "It's responding to me specifically." Ron frowned. "That's not normal. When has my life ever been normal?" Harry replied with a half-smile. He closed his eyes, focusing on the strange magical signature beneath his hand. "It feels familiar somehow." Instinctively, Harry pressed his wand tip to the floor and whispered, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." A crack appeared in the concrete, spreading outward in a perfect circle about 2 feet in diameter. The section sank slightly and slid sideways, revealing a small cavity below. "Bloody hell," Ron breathed. "How'd you know to say that?" I didn't, Harry admitted, leaning forward to peer into the space. It just felt right. Inside the cavity lay a single object, a small ornate key made of what appeared to be silver and gold twisted together. Symbols were etched along its shaft, a combination of runes Harry didn't recognize and two tiny crests. That's the Potter family crest, Harry said, pointing to one of the markings. And I think the other one is the Black family crest. A key with both your paternal and godfather's family crests. Ron said. That can't be a coincidence. Harry carefully lifted the key. The moment his fingers closed around it, the magical signature in the room stabilized, no longer fluctuating but humming with steady power. Whatever this opens, it's been waiting for me, Harry said quietly. A sudden crash from outside made them both spin around, wands raised. Just a cat, Ron said after a tense moment, spotting the animal darting away through the debris. But we should go. This place gives me the creeps. Harry pocketed the key, feeling its weight against his thigh as they exited the warehouse. The magical disturbance had stopped completely, the trace signature now contained entirely within the key itself. Back at the ministry, they filed a deliberately vague report about investigating the disturbance and finding nothing conclusive. Harry wasn't ready to share his discovery until he understood it better. After Ron left to meet Hermione for dinner, Harry sat alone in his office, examining the key under the light of his wand. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, intricate patterns flowed across the surface, changing slightly when viewed from different angles. "What are you for?" he murmured, turning it over in his fingers. A soft knock interrupted his contemplation. Luna Lovegood stood in his doorway, radish earrings swinging gently as she tilted her head. "You found something old," she said without preamble. "I could feel the shift from 3 floors away." Harry smiled despite himself. Luna now worked as a researcher in the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, specializing in previously undocumented species. Her intuition about magical oddities remained unmatched. "How do you always know these things?" he asked, gesturing for her to enter. Luna closed the door behind her and approached his desk with her characteristic dreamy expression. "Magic leaves impressions on people who find it. You're practically glowing with temporal displacement energy." "I'm what?" "You've touched something that exists partially outside our normal time flow," she explained, as if this were perfectly ordinary. "May I see it?" Harry hesitated only briefly before placing the key on the desk between them. Luna didn't reach for it, instead leaning forward to study it with wide, silver eyes. "Fascinating," she whispered. "It's goblin-made, but not by modern goblins. The metallurgical technique was discontinued around the time of Gringotts' founding." She looked up at Harry. "This key is at least 7 centuries old, possibly much older." "It has my family crest on it," Harry said. "And the Black family crest." Luna nodded thoughtfully. The ancient families often intertwined their destinies through magic as well as marriage. This key might have been created when the families were first established. But what does it open? "Something important enough to hide and protect for centuries," Luna replied. "Something waiting specifically for you." Harry ran a hand through his hair. "Great. Another magical destiny. Just what I needed." Luna smiled serenely. "Not all destinies are burdens, Harry. Some are gifts." She stood up. "Whatever it opens, I think you should find out soon. The key's awakening has already caused ripples. Others will have felt it too." After Luna left, Harry couldn't focus on anything else. The key seemed to grow heavier in his pocket, demanding attention. Making a sudden decision, he grabbed his cloak and headed for the ministry floors. 10 minutes later, he was standing in the marble lobby of Gringotts Bank. Though it was after regular banking hours, the goblin guards recognized him immediately. "Mr. Potter," one said with minimal courtesy. "The bank is closed for transactions." "I need to speak with whoever's in charge of Potter family vaults," Harry replied. "It's urgent." The goblin's eyes narrowed, but he gestured for Harry to follow. They proceeded down a corridor Harry had never noticed before, eventually stopping at an imposing door marked with goblin runes. "Wait here," the guard instructed, disappearing inside. A moment later, an elderly goblin emerged, regarding Harry with suspicious curiosity. His elaborate robes and the numerous keys hanging from his belt indicated high rank. "Mr. Potter. I am Grimstone, Director of Family Vault Relations. This is highly irregular. I apologize for the late visit," Harry said, "but I've discovered something that may relate to my family's history with Gringotts." Grimstone's expression remained impassive. "Follow me." They descended in a cart that moved with surprising smoothness compared to the regular vault transports. When they stopped, they were in a section of the bank Harry had never seen, a quiet stone corridor with only a few doors, each bearing family crests. Grimstone led him to a door marked with the Potter insignia. "This is our secure consultation room for the Potter accounts. Whatever you wish to discuss, we may speak freely here." Once inside, Harry produced the key. "I found this today. It bears both the Potter and Black family crests, and I believe it's very old." The goblin's composure slipped for an instant, his eyes widening as he stared at the key. He extended his hand. "May I examine it?" Harry hesitated but placed it in Grimstone's palm. The goblin held it reverently, turning it over with expert fingers. "This is goblin-forged platinum and orichalcum," he said quietly. "A metal combination we no longer work with, too volatile for modern vaults." He looked up at Harry with new respect. "Where did you find this?" Harry explained about the magical disturbances and the hidden cavity, watching as Grimstone's expression grew increasingly troubled. "Mr. Potter, this key matches no record in our current vault inventories," the goblin said finally. "It predates our modern registry system. However," he hesitated. "there are legends among Goblinkind of chambers beneath Gringotts that predate the bank itself. You're saying this could open something underneath the bank that even Gringotts doesn't control?" Grimstone's expression soured. "Such a suggestion is highly irregular and would ordinarily be dismissed. However, given your unique history and the undeniable authenticity of this key." He seemed to struggle with an internal conflict before coming to a decision. "I will take you to the founding chamber. If this key corresponds to anything in our domain, the answers will be found there." They descended further into the bank than Harry had ever gone, beyond the high-security vaults, past ancient doors sealed with magic that made Harry's skin prickle. The temperature dropped noticeably, and the air took on a strange quality, heavy with magic and time. Finally, they reached a vast circular chamber carved directly from bedrock. The walls were covered in intricate carvings depicting goblins and wizards working together to create what appeared to be the first vaults. In the center stood a single pedestal of black stone with a small depression on top. "This is the heart of Gringotts," Grimstone explained, his voice hushed with reverence. "When the bank was established, this chamber was created as a nexus point for all vault magics. It contains the complete magical blueprint of Gringotts, every vault, every passage, every security measure." Harry approached the pedestal slowly. "And you think my key might connect to something shown here? If what you possess is truly a key to a forgotten chamber within our domain, the heart will recognize it." Grimstone gestured to the depression. "Place it there." Harry removed the key from his pocket, feeling its magic responding to the chamber around them. As he stepped toward the pedestal, the carvings on the wall seemed to shift slightly in his peripheral vision. "The chamber recognizes your magic," Grimstone noted with surprise. "Most unusual for a wizard." Harry placed the key in the depression. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the key began to glow with golden light that spread outward across the surface of the pedestal in spiraling patterns. The floor beneath them shuddered. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a passage Harry was certain hadn't been there before. Grimstone looked genuinely shocked. "In all my centuries," he murmured, "I never believed the legends were literal." "What legends?" Harry asked, retrieving the key. Stories of a chamber beyond goblin reach, a vault not of our making that was sealed within the earth before Gringotts was built, Grimstone replied. We assumed it was merely a metaphor for wizard-goblin cooperation. The revealed passage emitted a soft golden light and a magical aura that felt surprisingly welcoming to Harry. I need to see what's down there, Harry said. The passage appears specifically attuned to you, Grimstone acknowledged reluctantly. As director, I should accompany you to document this unprecedented development. They entered the passage together, following a gently sloping path that curved downward. The walls were unlike the rest of Gringotts, not carved stone but a smooth, almost glass-like substance that seemed to glow from within. This material, Grimstone said, running a finger along the surface, is unknown to modern goblin crafting. It contains magic that responds to intent rather than specific enchantments. After walking for what felt like 10 minutes, they reached a circular door. Unlike the elaborate vault doors above, this one was deceptively simple, a smooth surface of the same glass-like material with a small keyhole at its center. The moment of truth, Harry murmured, inserting the key. It turned without resistance, and the door simply vanished, as if it had never been there at all. Beyond lay a chamber that took Harry's breath away. The space was massive, easily the size of the Great Hall at Hogwarts, with a domed ceiling that somehow showed a night sky despite being deep underground. Floating globes of soft light illuminated the room, revealing its contents. At the center stood 4 pedestals arranged in a square, each bearing a large book bound in different materials, one in what appeared to be red dragon hide, another in yellow cloth embroidered with black, the third in blue leather adorned with bronze, and the fourth in green snakeskin with silver clasps. Around the room's perimeter stood shelves filled with scrolls, smaller books, and objects Harry couldn't identify from a distance. Between the shelves hung tapestries depicting scenes from what appeared to be ancient magical history. Merlin's beard, Harry breathed. Grimstone looked equally stunned. This chamber, it cannot exist. We have mapped every cubic inch beneath Gringotts. Harry approached the 4 pedestals cautiously. As he drew nearer, he recognized symbols on each book that made his heart race. These are the crests of the Hogwarts founders, he said. Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Impossible, Grimstone whispered, but without conviction as he stared at the evidence before him. Harry reached for the red book, Gryffindor's, but hesitated, remembering countless magical traps he'd encountered as an Auror. Is it safe to touch? The chamber admitted you specifically, Grimstone reasoned. Logic suggests these items are meant for you to access. Taking a deep breath, Harry placed his hand on the red book. It felt warm to the touch, almost alive with magic. Opening it carefully, he found pages covered in handwriting he somehow knew belonged to Godric Gryffindor himself. These are spells, Harry said, scanning the first page. Spells I've never heard of, with notes about their creation and use. He moved to each book in turn, confirming that all 4 contained similar content, grimoires compiled by the founders themselves, filled with magic that had apparently been hidden away for centuries. The Forgotten Grimoires, Grimstone said with awe. They were thought to be a myth, the founders' personal spell collections, containing magic too powerful or unpredictable for common use. Harry turned to a page in Ravenclaw's book that showed a complex diagram of a spell designed to create temporary bridges between physical locations, not like apparition, but actual pathways through which multiple people could travel. Why would these be hidden beneath Gringotts? Harry wondered aloud. The bank was established after Hogwarts, Grimstone explained, keeping a respectful distance from the books. Historical accounts suggest the founders were among those who negotiated the original treaty with Goblinkin that allowed Gringotts to be built. Harry explored further, finding smaller volumes that appeared to be research journals and correspondence between the founders. Everything was meticulously preserved, protected by magic that had kept the chamber pristine for centuries. This is incredible, Harry said. This knowledge has been waiting all this time. A sudden shift in the magical atmosphere made both Harry and Grimstone turn toward the entrance. The door had reappeared, and on its surface, runes began to glow with increasing intensity. Someone is attempting to locate this chamber, Grimstone said sharply. The wards are responding. Harry moved instinctively to protect the grimoires. Is it in danger of being breached? Impossible to say, the goblin replied. This magic predates our current security systems. However, the surge of power when you opened the chamber may have created magical ripples detectable by sufficiently sensitive instruments. The runes flashed brightly then faded, returning to their dormant state. The threat appears to have passed, Grimstone observed. For now. Harry approached the door, examining the runes more closely. These aren't just goblin markings. Some of these are ancient human magic, protective spells I've seen in Auror training about forgotten magical defenses. This chamber represents something unprecedented, a genuine collaboration between wizard and goblin magic at its most fundamental level, Grimstone said, his professional composure returning despite the extraordinary circumstances. Mr. Potter, I need not emphasize the sensitivity of what we've discovered. Harry nodded, understanding the political implications. Relations between the Ministry and Gringotts remained tense even years after the war. A hidden chamber containing powerful magic that neither side controlled would cause chaos if publicly revealed. I won't tell anyone at the Ministry about this specific location, Harry promised. But these grimoires, this knowledge shouldn't remain buried. Grimstone's expression hardened. These artifacts exist in a legal gray area, Mr. Potter. They are within Gringotts' physical domain but appear intended for your magical lineage. This creates a complicated situation regarding ownership. I'm not interested in ownership, Harry said firmly. I'm interested in understanding what's here and why it was preserved. Their discussion was interrupted by a soft chiming sound emanating from the Hufflepuff grimoire. Harry approached it cautiously. The book had opened itself to a page containing what appeared to be a communication spell. As Harry watched, words began to form on the previously blank portion of the page. The Vault of Foundations has awakened. The Arcanum acknowledges the heir of two houses. Caution is advised. You are not alone in sensing its emergence. We will find you. What's the Arcanum? Harry asked, showing Grimstone the message. The goblin's eyes widened. A legend within a legend. Stories speak of a society of wizards and witches who guard ancient magical knowledge, separate from the Ministry, separate from any known magical institution. Great, Harry muttered. More cryptic warnings and secret societies. He traced his fingers over the words, which faded as soon as he touched them. The grimoire closed itself with a soft thump. I need time to study what's here, Harry decided. To understand what these grimoires contain before anyone else tries to claim them. Grimstone considered this. Gringotts' primary obligation is to security. While the ownership of these items remains ambiguous, their protection falls within our purview. He paused. I propose a compromise. You will have exclusive access to this chamber, registered under the highest security protocols. In exchange, you will share with Gringotts any information pertaining specifically to goblin magic you may discover. That seems fair, Harry agreed, relieved that the goblin wasn't going to attempt to seize everything. Be warned, Mr. Potter, Grimstone added gravely. The magical surge from this chamber's opening will not have gone unnoticed. Whatever the Arcanum may be, they are unlikely to be the only ones interested in what you found. Harry glanced around the chamber once more, taking in the vast repository of lost knowledge. I'll need to bring in help. People I trust completely. Your circle must remain small, Grimstone cautioned. Each additional person exponentially increases the risk of exposure. As they prepared to leave, Harry carefully collected the Gryffindor grimoire to take with him for initial study. The book felt right in his hands, as if it had been waiting for him specifically. At the chamber door, Harry paused. Director Grimstone, do you believe in magical destiny? The goblin's expression was unreadable. Goblins do not share wizard conceptions of fate or prophecy. We believe in intentions manifested through craftsmanship and magic. Whatever force preserved this chamber and connected it to your bloodline had a specific intention. And what do you think that intention was? That, Grimstone said, is what you must discover. They sealed the chamber, the door reappearing and the key glowing briefly before returning to normal. The passage back to the heart of Gringotts seemed shorter than before. I'll return tomorrow, Harry said as they reached the main bank level. There's too much to absorb in one visit. Grimstone nodded. I will personally oversee the creation of your access protocols. No records of the chamber's specific nature will be created, merely a new high-security vault registered to the Potterblack hereditary line. Outside Gringotts, night had fallen over Diagon Alley. Harry stood for a moment, the weight of the grimoire heavy in his enchanted moleskin pouch, the key secure in his pocket. The quiet street gave no indication that anything extraordinary had happened, that the magical world had just shifted beneath his feet. A movement in the shadows across the street caught his attention, a figure in a hooded cloak who turned away quickly when Harry looked in their direction. By the time Harry crossed the street, they had vanished, leaving only a lingering trace of unfamiliar magic. Harry apparat directly to Grimmauld Place, which he'd renovated over the years into a comfortable home while maintaining its extensive magical protections. In his study, he carefully placed Gryffindor's grimoire on his desk and stared at it. 6 years of increasingly frustrating aura work, feeling like he was just maintaining a status quo rather than making real change. And now this, a direct connection to the Founders, to magic that had been hidden away for centuries. Harry opened the book again, this time taking more time to examine the contents. The first pages contained an introduction in Gryffindor's hand. Herein are contained the works of Godric Gryffindor, spells of my own creation and discovery, set down for those of worthy heart and righteous purpose who may follow. These magics are not to be undertaken lightly, for they draw upon deeper wells of power than common incantations. Magic in its purest form responds not to words but to will and intent. The spells contained herein require not just the proper movements and incantations, but true understanding of their essential nature. I have sealed this grimoire along with the works of my fellow founders in the Vault of Foundations, to be opened only by one who carries the blood of ancient houses and the burden of magical destiny. Harry sat back, processing the implications. The vault had been created by the founders themselves, specifically to preserve magical knowledge for a future heir. A quiet pop announced Creature's appearance. The elderly house elf had mellowed considerably over the years, now serving Harry with grudging respect. Master has found old magic, Creature observed, eyeing the grimoire with unusual interest. Creature feels it. Old like the magic of the most ancient and noble house of Black, but different. You can sense it? Harry asked, curious. House elves always know old magic, Creature replied, as if this were obvious. It sings differently than new spells. Deeper. Harry considered this. Creature, have you ever heard of something called the Arcanum? The house elf's eyes widened. Creature has heard whispers only. Not for house elf ears. Secret wizards who keep old magic safe. He leaned closer, dropping his voice. Mistress Walburga said they were watching, always watching for those who find what should stay lost. And are they dangerous? Creature shrugged his bony shoulders. All who guard powerful secrets are dangerous, Master Harry. After Creature left, Harry sent his Patronus with messages to Ron, Hermione, and Luna, asking them to meet him the following evening. He didn't explain why, some things were too sensitive even for magical communication. He spent hours studying the first chapter of Gryffindor's grimoire, which focused on the fundamental nature of magical energy. The Founder's understanding of magic was fundamentally different from what Harry had learned at Hogwarts, less structured, more intuitive, treating magic as a living force rather than a tool to be controlled. One passage particularly caught his attention. The narrowing of magical practice into discrete spells with fixed incantations has brought safety and consistency, but at the cost of versatility and power. In the earliest days, witches and wizards shaped magic through pure will, their intent manifesting directly. The spells collected herein represent a middle path, structured enough to be reliable, fluid enough to adapt to the caster's true purpose. Harry tried one of the simpler spells, a variation on lumos that created light that could be shaped and directed according to the caster's need. The incantation was familiar but the wand movement subtly different, with an emphasis on feeling the light as an extension of one's own magic rather than a separate effect. When he cast it successfully, the light that emerged from his wand wasn't the usual steady glow but a swirling luminescence that responded to his thoughts, flowing like liquid sunshine between his fingers and illuminating exactly what he focused on while leaving the rest in shadow. "Incredible," Harry whispered, directing the light around the room with mere intention. A sudden crack outside the house's protective perimeter jolted him from his practice. The security wards vibrated with warning. Someone was testing them, probing for weaknesses. Harry extinguished the light spell and moved silently to the window. In the street below, a cloaked figure stood perfectly still, face hidden but wand extended toward Harry's house. It wasn't the same person he'd glimpsed in Diagon Alley. This figure was taller, broader. Harry's aura instincts took over. He disillusioned himself and slipped downstairs, positioning himself near the front door where he could observe without being seen. The wards held firm against the magical probing, which wasn't particularly aggressive, more investigative, as if the person were trying to identify the nature of the protections rather than break them. After several minutes, the figure lowered their wand and turned away. Just before they disapparated, Harry caught a glimpse of a distinctive tattoo on their wrist, an hourglass surrounded by arcane symbols. Harry recognized it immediately. It was the mark of the Unspeakables, the secretive Department of Mysteries employees who researched the most enigmatic aspects of magic. But something was off about it. The design was slightly altered from the official version he'd seen in Ministry files. Maintaining his disillusionment, Harry stepped outside the boundary of his wards, scanning the area for any lingering magical traces. He found nothing unusual except a small piece of parchment on the ground where the figure had stood. Written on it in handwriting he didn't recognize was a single line: "The Blackwood seeks what you have found. The prison cannot hold him forever." Harry stared at the cryptic warning, a chill running down his spine despite the warm summer night. He had no idea who the Blackwood might be, but the mention of prison suggested Azkaban, and anyone dangerous enough to be imprisoned there yet connected to ancient magic was certainly a threat. Back inside, Harry sent an urgent owl to the Auror office requesting information on any inmates with the name Blackwood. Then he returned to Gryffindor's grimoire, searching for any defensive spells that might strengthen his home's protections. He found a section describing wards unlike any he'd encountered before, protections tied not to locations but to bloodlines and intent, shields that would recognize friend from foe based on the purpose in their heart rather than specific identities. As dawn broke, Harry was still practicing the first of these ancient protections, a spell called Fidelius Sanguinum, a variation on the Fidelius charm that concealed not a location but the magical signature of a specific object or person, rendering them undetectable to magical tracking. He cast the spell on the grimoire itself, visualizing his own magical signature as the secret keeper. The book glowed briefly with a deep crimson light before returning to normal appearance. Exhausted but satisfied, Harry finally slept, the key and grimoire secured beneath new layers of protection. His dreams were filled with strange visions, vast chambers of forgotten magic, cloaked figures pursuing him through labyrinthine passages, and a voice that seemed to echo from the foundations of magic itself: "The old ways return. The balance shifts. Choose wisely, heir of two houses." Morning brought an urgent message from the Ministry. An owl delivered a sealed letter marked with the Auror office insignia: "Potter, responding to your inquiry regarding Blackwood. Thorn Blackwood, former Unspeakable, imprisoned in Azkaban 5 years ago for unauthorized magical experimentation resulting in 3 deaths. Classified as extremely dangerous. Update: security breach reported at Azkaban 6 hours ago. Blackwood cell found empty this morning. No signs of external assistance, no damage to wards or physical structures. Investigation ongoing. Report to headquarters immediately. H. Robards, head Auror. Harry stared at the letter, the implications hitting him like a bludger. The discovery of the vault, the cryptic warning, and now a dangerous escaped prisoner connected to experimental magic, all within 24 hours. This was no coincidence. He secured the grimoire with additional protective spells, placed the key in the moleskin pouch around his neck, and prepared to head to the ministry. Before leaving, he sent a quick Patronus message to Ron and Hermione. Plans changed. Meet me at the Three Broomsticks in Hogsmeade at noon. Tell no one at the ministry. It's urgent. At the Auror office, chaos reigned. Robards was bellowing orders as teams prepared to deploy across the country in search of the escaped prisoner. Potter. Robards called when he spotted Harry. You asked about Blackwood yesterday. Why? Harry thought quickly. Revealing the vault would create more problems than it solved right now. Anonymous tip during the East London investigation. Someone left a message suggesting Blackwood was involved in the magical anomalies we detected. Robards frowned. Blackwood was researching primal magic forms before his arrest, trying to access raw magical energy without standard spellcasting limitations. Completely unstable, killed 3 fellow researchers when an experiment went wrong. He lowered his voice. The case was heavily classified. Blackwood claimed he'd discovered something fundamental about magic that the ministry was suppressing. And now he's escaped, Harry said. Without breaking any wards. Exactly, Robards confirmed grimly. Whatever he was researching, he may have finally made it work. He handed Harry a file. You're on the capture team. His full case history, what we know of his research focus, known associates. Find him, Potter. Harry took the file, already planning to compare Blackwood's research with what he'd found in Gryffindor's grimoire. I'll start right away. As Harry left Robards' office, he passed the Department of Mysteries corridor and noticed unusual activity, multiple unspeakables moving with purpose, their normally calm demeanor replaced with obvious tension. One of them, a witch with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, locked eyes with Harry briefly. Her gaze dropped to the moleskin pouch visible at his neck before she turned away sharply. Harry continued walking, maintaining a casual pace while his mind raced. The unspeakables were agitated about something beyond Blackwood's escape. They knew, or at least suspected, that something significant had happened in the magical world. At the Three Broomsticks, Ron and Hermione were already waiting in a private back room Harry had requested in his message to Madame Rosmerta. What's going on? Hermione demanded as soon as Harry cast privacy charms around the room. Ron says you found something yesterday, and now there's chaos at the ministry over some escaped prisoner. Harry took a deep breath and placed the key on the table between them. I found this yesterday during the East London investigation. It led me to a hidden vault beneath Gringotts containing the personal grimoires of the 4 Hogwarts founders. Ron's mouth fell open. Bloody hell. Hermione stared at the key, her analytical mind visibly processing the implications. A vault predating Gringotts? That's archaeologically unprecedented. And grimoires from the founders themselves. She looked up at Harry. This could revolutionize our understanding of magical history. It's more than historical, Harry said, removing Gryffindor's grimoire from his pouch. The magic contained in these books is different from anything we use today. More primal, more intuitive. And potentially far more powerful. He demonstrated the light spell he'd learned, directing the fluid illumination between his fingers and around the room with mere thought. Hermione watched with academic fascination while Ron whistled in appreciation. That's bloody brilliant, Ron said. Imagine what Aurors could do with magic like that. That's partly why I needed to talk to you both, Harry said, letting the light fade. The prisoner who escaped, Thorn Blackwood, was researching something called primal magic before he was arrested. Magic that sounds very similar to what's described in these grimoires. Hermione's expression grew serious. You think he's after the vault? I received a warning last night suggesting exactly that, Harry confirmed, showing them the note. This is bigger than just us, Hermione said after a moment of thought. If these grimoires contain fundamentally different approaches to magic, it could have enormous implications for the entire wizarding world. There's more, Harry added, explaining about the message from the Arcanum and the Unspeakable who had tested his wards. I think multiple groups already know something's been found, even if they don't know exactly what or where. Ron leaned forward. So what's the plan? Hide the grimoires? Turn them over to the Department of Mysteries? Neither, Harry said firmly. This knowledge wasn't meant to be hidden away again or controlled by ministry bureaucracy. But it can't just be released haphazardly either. You need time to understand what you found before deciding what to do with it, Hermione concluded. And you need protection while you do. Harry nodded. I've arranged exclusive access to the vault through Gringotts. What I need from you both is cover at the Ministry while I investigate both the grimoires and Blackwood's connection to all this. We've got your back, mate, Ron said without hesitation. Always have. I can research historical references to the Arcanum, Hermione offered. If they've been guarding magical knowledge for centuries, there must be some trace of their activities in historical records. Their planning was interrupted by Luna's arrival. She glided into the room with her usual dreamy expression, but Harry noticed her eyes were sharper than normal, taking in every detail. The blibbering humdingers are very excited today, she announced, sitting down beside Hermione. They only get this way when ancient magic stirs. Harry quickly brought her up to speed on his discoveries. The Forgotten Grimoires, Luna said, eyes wide with wonder. Daddy published an article about them years ago. Everyone thought he was making it up, of course. She reached for the Gryffindor tome with reverent hands. May I? Harry nodded, and Luna opened the book, scanning the pages with surprising speed. Fascinating. The magical theory here aligns perfectly with research I've been doing on prehistoric magical creatures. Magic was different then, more fluid, less constrained. You understand this? Ron asked, peering over her shoulder at the complex diagrams. Parts of it, Luna admitted. Magic has always spoken to me differently. Professor Flitwick said I cast spells unlike anyone he'd taught, following intuition rather than rigid technique. She looked up at Harry. These grimoires weren't hidden because the magic was dangerous. They were hidden because it was becoming forgotten as standardized spellcasting became the norm. So why hide them at all? Hermione questioned. To preserve them, Luna said simply. Like keeping seeds safe through winter until the right conditions return for planting. Harry considered this perspective. And now the conditions are right? Why? Luna tilted her head thoughtfully. Magic ebbs and flows through history, Harry. Perhaps after Voldemort's final defeat, something fundamental shifted. She turned another page in the grimoire. Or perhaps you were always meant to find this, and the time is right because you're ready. Their discussion continued for hours, examining the grimoire and developing a strategy. They agreed on several immediate steps. Harry would continue studying the grimoires while searching for Blackwood, Hermione would research the Arcanum, Ron would manage the official Auror investigation to keep it away from the vault, and Luna would examine the magical theory to help Harry understand the ancient spells. As they prepared to leave, Luna paused at the door. Be careful with the fluid light spell, Harry. It reveals more than just what's in shadow, it shows magical traces normally invisible to the eye. Including those left by people trying to hide their presence. That evening, Harry returned to the vault beneath Gringotts, this time with the enhanced security protocols Grimstone had promised. No record of his visit appeared in the main ledgers, only a special key presented to a specific goblin provided access. The chamber felt different this time, more welcoming, as if it recognized his return. Harry approached the pedestals, this time selecting Ravenclaw's blue grimoire for closer study. While Gryffindor's book focused on magical theory and protective spells, Ravenclaw's contained more analytical content, the underlying principles of how magic functioned at its most fundamental level. One passage particularly caught his attention: the division between wizard and magic is illusion, a construct created by our limited understanding. In truth, We do not channel magic through our wands, we merely remember, for a moment, that we are magic. The most powerful spells are those that dissolve the artificial boundary between caster and cast, between the wielder and the wielded. Another section described a detection spell that revealed not just hidden objects but hidden magic itself, conceptually similar to Luna's description of the fluid light spell's secondary properties. Conspectus Arcanum, Harry pronounced carefully, following the intricate wand movement detailed in Ravenclaw's precise diagrams. The air around him seemed to thicken and shimmer, colors shifting beyond normal spectrum. Suddenly, he could see the magical structure of the chamber itself, layers of intricate spellwork woven into every surface, pulsing with different energies and purposes. Most fascinating were the threads of magic connecting the four grimoires, golden strands of power that linked the books in a complex pattern, forming what appeared to be a single integrated magical system rather than four separate works. As Harry followed these connections with his enhanced vision, he noticed something unexpected, a fifth strand leading away from the grimoires toward what appeared to be a solid wall behind one of the bookshelves. Maintaining the detection spell, Harry approached the wall, watching as the magical thread disappeared into the seemingly solid stone. He pressed his hand against the surface, feeling not cold rock but a subtle vibration. Fluid magic responds to intent, Harry murmured, recalling Gryffindor's writings. Rather than searching for a specific unlocking spell, he focused his will on the concept of revealing what was hidden, channeling his magic through his palm against the wall. The stone rippled like water and dissolved, revealing a small alcove containing a single object, a wand unlike any Harry had seen before. It appeared to be made of a silvery wood with veins of what looked like liquid gold running through it. Harry reached for it hesitantly, remembering countless cursed objects he'd encountered as an Auror. But the magic he could see surrounding the wand wasn't dark or threatening, it pulsed with the same harmonious energy as the grimoires themselves. When his fingers closed around the handle, warmth spread up his arm, and the wand emitted a shower of multicolored sparks far more vibrant than the response he'd gotten from his holly and phoenix feather wand at Ollivander's years ago. A soft voice seemed to whisper directly into his mind, "The Wand of Foundations welcomes the heir of two houses. For magics united in single purpose." A wand created by all four founders together, Harry realized with awe. He examined it more closely. The handle was carved with tiny symbols representing each house, a lion, badger, eagle, and serpent, while the shaft contained intricate runes that shifted and changed as he turned it. Testing it cautiously, Harry cast a simple lumos. Instead of the standard light, the wand produced a perfect miniature sun that hovered above his palm, radiating warmth and light that seemed more real, more alive than any illumination spell he'd used before. "Nox," he whispered, and the light didn't simply vanish but folded in on itself naturally, like a sunset compressed into seconds. Harry tucked the wand carefully into his robes alongside his original one. The discovery felt significant, a tool specifically designed for working with the type of magic described in the grimoires. As he continued exploring the chamber, Harry became aware of a subtle shift in the magical atmosphere. The detection spell still active, he could see a disturbance near the entrance, ripples in the magical field as if someone or something were attempting to observe the chamber from outside. Harry moved quickly to the door, wand raised. Using the enhanced perception granted by Ravenclaw's spell, he could see magical tendrils extending through the sealed entrance, a sophisticated magical surveillance attempt. Drawing on Gryffindor's protective magic, Harry cast Fidelia Sanguinum on the entire chamber, visualizing it disappearing from all magical detection. The intrusive tendrils wavered and dissolved, unable to maintain their connection through the powerful concealment spell. Heart racing, Harry gathered the Ravenclaw grimoire and prepared to leave. Someone had tracked him to the vault despite Gringotts' security measures. The circle of those who knew about his discovery was growing, becoming more dangerous with each passing day. As he sealed the chamber behind him, Harry made a decision. It was time to take a more aggressive approach, not just studying the ancient magic but actively using it to find Blackwood before the escaped prisoner could locate the vault himself. In the Gringotts cart returning to the surface, Harry's mind raced with plans. The Founder's magic offered capabilities beyond standard Auror tracking spells. With the new wand and grimoires, he might be able to trace connections that normal magic couldn't detect. Grimstone met him at the upper levels, his expression even more severe than usual. "Mr. Potter, there has been an incident you should be aware of," the goblin said quietly. "Approximately 1 hour ago, an individual attempted to access our deepest security records, specifically, those pertaining to sub-bank architectural plans." "Was it Blackwood?" Harry asked. "The intruder escaped before identification was possible," Grimstone replied. "However, they left this." The goblin handed Harry a small object that appeared to be a coin. On closer inspection, Harry recognized the same hourglass symbol he'd seen on the wrist of the figure outside Grimmauld Place. "The Department of Mysteries is involved," Harry said grimly. "Not officially," Grimstone corrected. "Our sources within the Ministry indicate that no authorized operation involving Gringotts is currently sanctioned. This appears to be independent action." Harry pocketed the coin. "Rogue unspeakables working with Blackwood? Or pursuing him for their own purposes," Grimstone suggested. "The Department of Mysteries has always operated with considerable autonomy, even from the Minister." Outside Gringotts, Diagon Alley was quieter than usual, many shops closing early as news of Blackwood's escape spread through the wizarding community. The Daily Prophet's evening edition featured a front-page headline, "Dangerous Magical Researcher Escapes Azkaban, Ministry Baffled." Harry operated directly to Grimmauld Place, reinforcing his home's protections with both standard aura wards and the more fluid protective magic from Gryffindor's grimoire. He spent the evening studying both grimoires, comparing their contents to Blackwood's research notes from the Ministry file. The similarities were striking. Blackwood had been investigating what he called pre-formalized magic, approaches to spellcasting that predated the standardized incantations and wand movements taught in modern magical education. His theoretical framework paralleled the founder's descriptions of how magic had once been practiced. But Blackwood's notes suggested a dangerous obsession with power rather than understanding. Where the founders wrote of harmony and balance with magical forces, Blackwood's research focused on domination and amplification, forcing raw magical energy to obey through sheer will. The file contained transcripts from his trial where Blackwood had ranted about magical potential squandered by artificial constraints and power that could remake the world if properly unleashed. Most disturbing was his final statement before being sentenced to Azkaban: "You imprison me for seeking truth." The founders knew it. They hid it away rather than let it be corrupted. "I will find their legacy and restore magic to its rightful form. No prison can hold the man who understands magic's true nature." Harry sat back, realization dawning. Blackwood had been searching for the founders' grimoires all along. His research hadn't just paralleled their work, it had been an attempt to rediscover what they had intentionally hidden. A soft pop announced Creature's arrival with a tray of food Harry hadn't requested. "Master needs strength," the elf said by way of explanation. "Old magic drains differently than new spells." Harry realized the elf was right, he felt unusually tired despite having cast relatively few spells. "Thank you, Creature. Have you noticed anything unusual around the house today? Any magical disturbances?" Creature's ears twitched. "Someone was watching earlier. Not wizard magic, different." Creature strengthened the kitchen wards himself. "Different how?" Harry pressed. "Old magic," Creature said simply. "Like what Master found, but angry." Harry nodded, filing away this information. If Blackwood was using magic similar to what was contained in the grimoires, he might be able to sense Harry's use of the same techniques. After eating, Harry turned to the practical question of tracking Blackwood. The Auror office would be using standard methods, detection spells targeting his magical signature, informant networks, monitoring of known associates. But if Blackwood was using primal magic, those methods might prove ineffective. Ravenclaw's grimoire described a locating spell unlike any Harry had encountered before. Rather than tracking a specific magical signature, it detected disturbances in what she called the magical substrate, the underlying field of magical energy that permeated the world. According to Ravenclaw's notes, any practitioner of primal magic would create distinctive ripples in this field, especially when casting powerful spells. The locating spell would visualize these disturbances, potentially revealing Blackwood's location if he was actively using the ancient magic. Harry practiced the complex wand movements required, finding that the Founder's wand made the spell significantly easier to cast than his regular wand. After several attempts, he managed to create a ghostly map of magical energy covering London and its surroundings. Most of the magical activity appeared as soft blue glows, standard spellcasting creating minor disturbances in the substrate. But in one location, about 20 miles north of London, a different signature pulsed with red-gold intensity. "Got you," Harry whispered. He sent his Patronus to Ron with a coded message about his discovery, then prepared for confrontation. Dressing in his aura robes for the magical protection they offered, Harry armed himself with both wands and a selection of defensive potions. Before leaving, he cast one of Hufflepuff's specialized concealment spells from the grimoire, a variation on disillusionment that hid not just his physical presence but his magical signature as well. The location revealed by Ravenclaw's spell was an abandoned quarry surrounded by dense woodland. Harry apparat to its edge, maintaining the concealment spell as he approached cautiously. The magical disturbance was stronger here, he could feel it even without the detection spell, a heaviness in the air like the pressure before a thunderstorm. At the center of the quarry stood a solitary figure. Even from a distance, Harry could tell this was Blackwood, tall and gaunt with wild hair, his prison robes discarded in favor of a makeshift outfit cobbled together from what appeared to be stolen clothes. He was moving in slow, deliberate patterns, wand extended, drawing glowing symbols in the air that lingered instead of fading. Harry crept closer, staying behind cover. Blackwood appeared to be creating a complex magical construct, a three-dimensional matrix of symbols and energy patterns that hovered before him, growing more intricate with each movement. With a shock, Harry recognized elements from Ravenclaw's grimoire, but distorted, forced into unnatural configurations that pulsed with unstable energy. Blackwood wasn't just using primal magic, he was attempting to create a focusing array to amplify it beyond its natural limitations. According to Ravenclaw's warnings, such amplification was dangerously unstable, potentially causing catastrophic magical backlash. Harry had to interrupt the process before it was completed. Dropping his concealment, he stepped forward, both wands ready. "Thorn Blackwood," he called, his aura voice steady and authoritative. "By authority of the Ministry of Magic, you're under arrest." Blackwood spun around, his gaunt face breaking into a disturbing smile when he saw Harry. "Potter," he said, his voice raspy from disuse. "The Ministry's golden boy. I wondered who would find me first, you or them." "Step away from the magical construct," Harry ordered, moving slowly to his right to gain a better tactical position. Blackwood laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the quarry. "You don't even know what you're looking at, do you? Despite the power you've recently found." His eyes narrowed, focusing on Harry with unsettling intensity. "Yes, I can sense it on you. The old magic. The true magic. You found something significant." Harry kept his expression neutral, but inwardly he cursed. Blackwood could somehow detect the residue of the Founder's magic on him. "Your research killed 3 people, Harry said, continuing to circle. "Whatever you're doing here will only cause more harm." "Necessary sacrifices," Blackwood dismissed with a wave of his hand. "They lacked the vision to see what we were uncovering." His eyes gleamed with fanatical light. "But you've seen it now, haven't you, Potter? The truth about magic that they've hidden for centuries." "I've seen that the Founders sealed away certain knowledge for good reason," Harry countered, noting the instability in Blackwood's magical construct, pulsing tendrils of energy that whipped out randomly, scorching the ground where they touched. "They didn't seal it away out of fear," Blackwood snarled, suddenly angry. "They protected it from those who would dilute it, domesticate it. Magic was wild once, Potter. Powerful beyond our modern imagination. What we practice now is a pale shadow." As Blackwood spoke, the construct behind him grew more unstable, tendrils of raw magic lashing out with increasing frequency. Harry recognized the danger signs from the grimoires. Blackwood was losing control. "Your construct is failing," Harry warned, genuine concern in his voice despite the man's crimes. "The energy pattern is destabilizing." For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across Blackwood's face as he glanced back at his creation. In that instant of distraction, Harry struck. Using the Founder's wand, he cast a containment spell from Gryffindor's grimoire, Contigo Vortex, creating a swirling barrier of protective magic around the unstable construct. Simultaneously, with his Holly wand, he cast a standard Auror immobilization hex at Blackwood himself. Blackwood blocked the immobilization hex with surprising speed but was unprepared for the nature of the containment spell. The vortex of protective magic surrounded his construct, stabilizing its wild fluctuations through contrary rotation. "What is this?" Blackwood demanded, staring at the containment spell with academic fascination despite the situation. "This isn't standard aura magic." "Surrender now," Harry said, both wands still trained on the man. "Whatever you're trying to accomplish here isn't worth more lives." Blackwood's expression hardened. "You found it, haven't you? The Vault of Foundations. The grimoires." His voice took on a desperate edge. "You don't understand what you possess, Potter. The power, the knowledge, it can transform our world. I understand enough to know that magic like this requires respect, not exploitation," Harry replied, maintaining the containment spell while moving closer. Blackwood's eyes darted between Harry, the contained construct, and the surrounding quarry, clearly calculating his options. Then his gaze fixed on Harry's second wand, the Founder's creation, and his expression changed to one of reverent shock. "The Wand of Foundations," he whispered. "So it's true. All of it." His academic interest seemed to overcome his desperation for a moment. "How does it channel the primal energy? The resonance patterns must be extraordinary." Harry remained silent, unwilling to engage with Blackwood's obsessive interest or confirm his suspicions. The standoff was interrupted by the crack of apparition as Ron appeared at the quarry's edge with two other Aurors. Blackwood's head snapped toward the sound, his momentary scholarly fascination replaced by cold calculation. "This isn't over, Potter," he said quietly. "What you found belongs to all wizard kind, not to be hoarded or controlled by the Ministry. I will free that knowledge." Before Harry could respond, Blackwood slashed his wand in a pattern Harry didn't recognize. The ground beneath them trembled, and the air filled with pulverized stone dust, creating an impenetrable cloud. By the time Harry could clear the air with a wind charm, Blackwood had vanished. The magical construct remained, now fully contained and slowly dissipating within Gryffindor's protective vortex. Ron and the other Aurors rushed forward. "Harry! You all right?" Ron called, wand at the ready as he scanned for threats. "He's gone," Harry said, tucking the Founder's wand away before the other Aurors could get a clear look at it. "Disapparated during the confusion. What the bloody hell was he doing here?" Ron asked, examining the contained magical construct with professional caution. "Some kind of amplification array," Harry explained, providing the basic details while omitting any mention of the grimoires or primal magic. "I managed to contain it before it destabilized completely." The other Aurors began securing the scene and casting standard detection spells to trace Blackwood's disapparition trail. Harry knew they would find nothing. The escaped prisoner's understanding of primal magic would allow him to disapparate without leaving the usual magical signature. "He knows I've found something," Harry told Ron quietly as they walked the perimeter of the quarry. "He could sense the magic on me somehow." Ron swore under his breath. "That complicates things. If he's specifically targeting you now." "I can handle Blackwood," Harry said with more confidence than he felt. "It's the other interested parties I'm more concerned about. The Arcanum, the rogue unspeakables, they're all converging on this discovery." "Hermione found something about the Arcanum," Ron replied, keeping his voice low. "Ancient Wizarding Society, exists in the shadows. Their whole purpose is supposedly monitoring and protecting magical knowledge that's too powerful or disruptive. She thinks they might have had a hand in establishing the Department of Mysteries originally, before it became part of the Ministry. So they could have members inside the Ministry, Harry concluded. Inside the Ministry, Gringotts, probably even Hogwarts, Ron confirmed. Generations of witches and wizards dedicated to keeping certain magical knowledge controlled. This aligned with the warning Harry had received and explained the Arcanum's quick awareness of the vault's opening. They'd been waiting, watching for any sign of the Founder's legacy re-emerging. After completing the standard aura documentation of the incident, Harry returned to Grimmauld Place. He found an unexpected visitor waiting in his study, Luna Lovegood, calmly paging through Gryffindor's grimoire with Creature serving her tea. "I hope you don't mind," she said without looking up. "The grimoire called to me, and Creature was kind enough to let me in. The protective wards recognized me as a friend." "It's fine," Harry assured her, too mentally exhausted to be surprised by Luna's characteristic directness. "Did you find something useful?" Luna nodded, marking her place in the book with a colorful feather. "The Founders didn't just create new spells, Harry. They developed an entirely different relationship with magic itself." She looked up, her silvery eyes unusually focused. "The magic we use today is like speaking a formal language with strict grammatical rules. What they practiced was more like singing, intuitive, emotional, connected to the caster's very essence." Harry sat down across from her, accepting a cup of tea from Creature. "I encountered Blackwood tonight. He's trying to use similar magic, but it's unstable, dangerous. Because he's approaching it with the wrong intention," Luna explained. "The grimoires are very clear about this. Primal magic responds to the caster's true purpose, not just their technical skill." She tapped a passage in the book. "Gryffindor writes that magic knows the heart that channels it. Forcing it to obey through will alone creates dangerous imbalance." Harry described the amplification array Blackwood had been creating and his use of the containment spell to stabilize it. "The Contigo Vortex," Luna noted with approval. "Perfect counterbalance to wild energy. The Founders understood the importance of harmony in powerful magic." Their discussion continued into the night, with Luna helping Harry understand subtle aspects of the grimoire's teachings that he had missed. Her intuitive grasp of magical theory proved invaluable, her unconventional thinking perfectly suited to the fluid nature of primal magic. As dawn approached, Harry reached a decision. "I need to return to the vault. There must be more information about how the Founders intended this knowledge to be used, and why they chose to hide it away." Luna nodded. "I think that's wise. The answers you seek are there." She stood, gathering her things. "But be careful, Harry. You're not the only one seeking those answers now." After Luna left, Harry sent messages to Ron, Hermione, and Grimstone, arranging to meet at Gringotts that afternoon. Until then, he needed rest. Working with the primal magic was taxing in ways that standard spells weren't, drawing more deeply on his own magical core. As he drifted into sleep, the Founder's wand beside his pillow, Harry's dreams were filled with echoes of ancient magic and shadowy figures pursuing knowledge that could reshape the wizarding world forever. The game of discovery and pursuit had only just begun. Chapter 2, Ancient Awakening. Harry woke to the sound of tapping on his bedroom window. A tawny owl peered in at him, a small scroll tied to its leg. Groggily, he let the bird in, wondering who'd be messaging him so early. The note was brief, written in an elegant hand he didn't recognize. "The Arcanum requests your presence at the crossroads of Nocturne and Horizon Alley at midnight. Come alone if you wish to understand what you've awakened. Your safety is guaranteed by ancient covenant." No signature, just a wax seal bearing the same symbol he'd seen form in the Hufflepuff grimoire, a triangle enclosing a spiral. "Brilliant," Harry muttered, running a hand through his already messy hair. "Mysterious meetings with secret societies. Just what I needed." He tucked the note into his pocket and glanced at the clock, nearly noon. He'd slept far longer than intended, his body recovering from the magical exertion of the previous day. The founder's wand still lay beside his pillow, emitting a faint, pleasant warmth. Harry picked it up, feeling that now familiar surge of connection. Practicing with this wand would have to wait, though. He had a meeting at Gringotts in an hour. After a quick shower and change of clothes, Harry secured both grimoires in his moleskin pouch and headed downstairs. Creature had left breakfast under a warming charm with a note of his own: "Master should eat before more old magic." Creature has reinforced the kitchen wards again. The house elf's growing protectiveness was touching, if slightly alarming. If Creature was taking extra security measures unprompted, he must be sensing dangers Harry couldn't yet perceive. Harry ate quickly, then apparat to the designated meeting point near Gringotts, a small wizarding cafe that had opened after the war. Ron and Hermione were already waiting, heads close together in serious conversation. "Morning," Harry said, sliding into the chair beside them. "Or afternoon, I suppose." "You look terrible," Ron noted helpfully. Hermione gave him a more appraising look. "You look magically drained. The ancient spells are taking more out of you than regular magic, aren't they?" Harry nodded. "It's different, like using entirely different magical muscles. Luna's been helping me understand the theory behind it." "Speaking of theory," Hermione said, pushing a small leather-bound book across the table. "I found this in a locked section of the Ministry archives. It's a journal from 1723 that mentions the Arcanum directly." Harry opened the journal carefully. The yellowed pages contained handwritten notes from what appeared to be a ministry official documenting various magical organizations of the time. "They're described as guardians of magical equilibrium," Hermione explained, pointing to a specific passage. "Founded around the time of Hogwarts by witches and wizards concerned about the standardization of magical education. They believed certain types of magic were being systematically excluded from the curriculum. So they're not necessarily opposed to what we found?" Harry asked. "It's complicated," Hermione replied. "According to this account, they don't oppose magical knowledge itself but believe some forms of magic require a specific philosophical approach to be used safely. They're particularly interested in magic that interacts directly with what they call the primal currents. Like what's in the grimoires," Harry said, thinking of the fluid, intuitive magic he'd been learning. Ron leaned forward. "There's something else you should know. The Auror office received reports this morning of a break-in at Ollivander's. Nothing was stolen, but Ollivander himself is pretty shaken up. Says someone was asking very specific questions about wand lore, particularly about wands capable of channeling unstructured magical energies." "Blackwood," Harry muttered. "Most likely," Ron agreed. "Robards has assigned a protection detail to Ollivander, but we're stretched thin with teams still searching the country for Blackwood." Harry filled them in about the note he'd received that morning. Hermione's eyes widened at the mention of the Arcanum's invitation. "You can't seriously be considering meeting them alone," she said. "I need information," Harry countered. "If the Arcanum has been watching over this type of magic for centuries, they might know more about what Blackwood is planning, and how to stop him." "It's obviously a trap," Ron argued. "Maybe," Harry conceded. "But my instincts say otherwise." The note mentioned an ancient covenant. "Luna says that magical oaths from that era were binding in ways modern unbreakable vows can't match." Hermione still looked skeptical but knew that expression on Harry's face. He'd already decided. "At least take this," she said, pressing a small silver disc into his hand. "It's a communication charm I've been developing. Activate it if you're in trouble, and Ron and I will know exactly where to find you." Harry pocketed the disc with a grateful nod. "It's time to meet Grimstone. You two ready to see the vault for yourselves?" 20 minutes later, they stood in the heart of Gringotts with Director Grimstone, who regarded Ron and Hermione with obvious suspicion. "Mr. Potter, I agreed to your exclusive access, not group excursions," the goblin said disapprovingly. "I trust them with my life," Harry replied simply. "And we'll need their expertise to fully understand what we've found." Grimstone's expression remained sour, but he nodded curtly. The magical disturbances around the bank have increased. 3 separate attempts to penetrate our security wards last night alone. Were they successful? Hermione asked. Gringotts has never been breached, Grimstone replied with a hint of pride, conveniently forgetting the dragon incident during the war. However, the nature of these attempts concerns me. They targeted our oldest defenses specifically, ones dating back to the bank's founding. Someone knows about the vault, Harry concluded grimly. Grimstone led them to the hidden passage, which appeared as soon as Harry approached with the key. As they descended, Harry noticed the walls looked different than during his previous visits, the glass-like material now pulsed with subtle colors that responded to their presence. The chamber is becoming more active, Grimstone noted. Adjusting to regular use after centuries of dormancy. When they reached the vault door, Harry inserted the key, feeling the now familiar sensation of the door dissolving rather than opening. Ron and Hermione gasped behind him as the massive chamber came into view. Bloody hell, Ron whispered, staring at the 4 pedestals with their ancient grimoires. You weren't exaggerating. Hermione moved forward in a daze, her academic mind clearly overwhelmed by the historical significance of what she was seeing. These books, they must contain the foundations of all modern magical theory. And quite a bit that never made it into modern magical theory, Harry added, approaching the pedestals. He noticed immediately that something had changed, the grimoires were now arranged in a slightly different pattern, the magical threads connecting them glowing more brightly. They've shifted position, he told Grimstone. The goblin frowned. No one has entered since your last visit. I don't think anyone needed to, Harry said, recalling Ravenclaw's writings about magical consciousness. The chamber itself is responding to use. Hermione was already examining the nearest bookshelf, her fingers hovering reverently over ancient scrolls and artifacts. This collection, it's beyond priceless. Magical theory texts predating the International Statute of Secrecy, original research notes from the founders. Ron, meanwhile, had gravitated toward a section of the chamber Harry hadn't fully explored, a collection of what appeared to be weapons mounted on the wall. These aren't just decorative, Ron observed, examining a sword with expert eyes. His Auror training had included magical weaponry. This blade has runes for spellcasting woven directly into the metal. Harry joined him, noting other items, daggers, shields, even what appeared to be a staff topped with a crystal that glowed faintly blue. Magical tools from an era when wands weren't yet the standard focus, Harry surmised, remembering passages from Gryffindor's grimoire. Different magical traditions used different implements. Hermione called them over to where she discovered a large stone basin similar to Dumbledore's pensieve but carved with different runes. I think this is for spell development, she said excitedly. According to these inscriptions, it allows multiple casters to combine their magical signatures to create new spells collaboratively. As they continued exploring, Harry filled them in on his discovery of the Founder's Wand and demonstrated some of the basic spells he'd learned from the grimoires. Ron whistled appreciatively when Harry used the fluid light spell to illuminate the entire chamber with dancing patterns that responded to their movements. That doesn't feel like any lumos I've ever cast, Ron said, watching light swirl around his fingers. Because it's not just creating light, Hermione observed analytically. It's manifesting your magical energy in visible form. That's fundamentally different from standard spellcasting. Harry nodded. That's what makes this magic so powerful, and potentially dangerous in the wrong hands. It's a direct expression of will and intent rather than a formulaic process. They spent the next few hours systematically documenting the chamber's contents, with Hermione creating detailed catalogues of the texts and Ron mapping the physical layout. Harry focused on the grimoires themselves, particularly the Hufflepuff volume he hadn't yet studied in depth. Unlike Gryffindor's focus on protective magic or Ravenclaw's analytical approach, Hufflepuff's grimoire centered on healing magic and spells that worked with the natural world. One section detailed techniques for sensing and channeling what she called earth currents, natural flows of magical energy through the landscape. This explains why certain locations have stronger magical properties, Harry realized. Hogwarts, Stonehenge, the Ministry location, they're all built on convergence points of these natural currents. Hermione looked up from her cataloging. That aligns with some recent magical archaeology research. They've found evidence that ancient wizarding settlements were specifically positioned along what they call ley lines. Blackwood's research mentioned something similar, Harry recalled. He was investigating how to tap directly into these currents for more powerful spellcasting. Grimstone, who had been silently observing their exploration, finally spoke. Such knowledge was common among ancient goblins. We can sense earth currents naturally, it's how we locate precious metals and stones. It's also why Gringotts was built at this specific location in London. This new understanding gave Harry an idea. If Blackwood was attempting to access these natural magical currents, perhaps he could be tracked by monitoring disturbances in their flow. Hufflepuff's grimoire described exactly such a detection spell, Terrae Resonantia, designed to visualize fluctuations in earth magic. Harry decided to try it, drawing the Founder's wand and following the complex wand movement described in the text. As he completed the spell, the chamber floor seemed to become transparent, revealing what looked like rivers of golden light flowing deep beneath them. The magical currents under London, Hermione breathed, kneeling to examine the phenomenon more closely. The glowing streams pulsed with steady rhythm, except for one location where the flow appeared disturbed, like a stone thrown into a smooth-flowing river. The disruption was centered near the British Museum, several miles away. Someone's interfering with the natural flow, Harry said, pointing to the disturbance. Actively drawing power from it. That's not Ministry activity, Ron said with certainty. We have strict protocols about magical work in Muggle-dense areas, especially around national landmarks. We need to investigate, Harry decided. Blackwood might be attempting another amplification array. Grimstone cleared his throat. Mr. Potter, before you leave, there's one more aspect of the chamber you should be aware of. The goblin led them to what had appeared to be a solid wall but now revealed itself as another doorway in response to his touch. Beyond lay a smaller room containing a single stone table upon which rested a large crystal sphere. This was sealed until yesterday, Grimstone explained. It opened on its own after your last visit. Harry approached the sphere cautiously. Unlike a prophecy orb, this crystal contained what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of Britain, with tiny points of light scattered across its surface. It's showing magical sites connected to the earth currents, Hermione realized, comparing the pattern to what they'd just seen beneath the floor. Look, Hogwarts, Stonehenge, the Ministry. And this, Grimstone said, pointing to a pulsing red light near the Scottish border, began glowing this morning. The location was remote, mountainous terrain far from any wizarding settlement. Yet the crystal indicated significant magical activity there. Another disturbance like the one near the museum? Harry asked. More concerning, Grimstone replied. According to this artifact, the natural current at that location is being not just tapped but redirected. The implications were alarming. If Blackwood had found a way to manipulate the earth currents themselves, he could potentially create magical disturbances far beyond what the Ministry was equipped to handle. We need to split up, Harry decided. Ron, contact the Auror office and organize a team to investigate the museum disturbance, make up whatever cover story you need. Hermione, see what you can learn from these grimoires about redirecting earth currents and potential countermeasures. What about you? Hermione asked, clearly concerned. Harry checked his watch. I'm going to meet with the Arcanum tonight. If anyone knows what Blackwood might be planning with these currents, it's them. Before leaving the vault, Harry studied Hufflepuff's grimoire for any spells that might help him in his midnight meeting. He found a subtle protection charm called Fidelitas Cordis that created an invisible shield responsive to the caster's perception of threat, essentially, a magical early warning system. Be careful with that one, Hermione warned after reading the description. It draws directly from your magical core. If you're already drained from using other primal magic, it could leave you vulnerable. I'll be careful, Harry promised, knowing he probably wouldn't be. They sealed the vault and returned to the surface, where Grimstone provided them with special access tokens, small golden coins that would allow Ron and Hermione to enter the vault in Harry's absence. These are against all Gringotts protocols, the goblin said severely. Use them only in dire circumstances. Outside, the afternoon sun was already beginning to fade. Harry felt the weight of everything they'd discovered pressing down on him. Somewhere in London, Blackwood was drawing power from the ancient magical currents. In Scotland, something even more concerning was developing. And in a few hours, he would meet a secret society that had been watching from the shadows for centuries. I don't like this, mate, Ron said as they prepared to separate. Too many unknowns. Welcome to my life, Harry replied with a grim smile. I'll be fine. Just make sure that museum situation doesn't escalate. Back at Grimmauld Place, Harry prepared for the meeting by studying both Gryffindor's protective spells and several defensive techniques from Hufflepuff's grimoire. He practiced with the Founder's Wand, growing more comfortable with its unique response to his magic. The ancient spells felt increasingly natural, less like memorized techniques and more like remembering something he'd always known but forgotten. Luna's description of it being more like singing than speaking made perfect sense now. The magic flowed through him differently, resonating with something deeper than conscious thought. As midnight approached, Harry disillusioned himself and apparat to the edge of Knockturn Alley. The intersection with Horizon Alley was deserted at this hour, the shops long closed and even the more dubious establishments further down the alley quiet on a weeknight. Harry positioned himself with clear sight lines in all directions, both wands ready, his holly wand in his right hand, the Founder's Wand concealed but accessible. Hermione's communication disc was secure in his pocket, a reassuring backup plan. Precisely at midnight, the air at the center of the intersection shimmered. A figure appeared, not through apparition, which would have made a distinctive sound, but through some other form of magical transportation that simply revealed what was already there. A woman stood before him, tall and composed in robes of deep purple embroidered with silver symbols similar to those in the grimoires. Her dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and she carried no visible wand, though Harry could sense powerful magic radiating from her. Harry Potter, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite its soft tone. I am Alicia Vance, speaker for the Arcanum. You may show yourself. Harry maintained his disillusionment, studying her carefully. Vance? Any relation to Emmeline Vance from the Order of the Phoenix? A sad smile touched her lips. My great-aunt. She served both the Order and the Arcanum, though few knew of the latter. That connection gave Harry pause. Emmeline had died protecting him during the war, a fact that still weighed on his conscience. After a moment's consideration, he cancelled his disillusionment spell, stepping into the dim light of the intersection but keeping his wand ready. How did you know I was here? He asked. The Fidelitas Cordis you cast earlier, Alicia explained. It's a beautiful spell, but it creates a distinctive resonance for those who know how to listen. Harry frowned. If she could detect Hufflepuff's subtle protection charm, his magical preparations might not provide the advantage he'd hoped. Why did you want to meet? He asked directly. Because you've awakened something that has slumbered for centuries, Alicia replied, gesturing to the air around them. Can't you feel it? The currents are stirring, responding to the old magic being used again. Now that she mentioned it, Harry could sense something, a subtle vibration in the magical atmosphere, like the feeling before a thunderstorm but more pervasive. The Vault of Foundations was sealed for a reason, Mr. Potter, she continued. Not because the magic it contains is evil or forbidden, but because it requires balance, a harmony between will and wisdom that few possess naturally. And the Arcanum has appointed itself judge of who possesses this balance. Harry challenged. Alicia shook her head. We are not judges but guardians. For 1,000 years, we have watched over the transition between magical ages. When the Founders standardized magical education, much was gained: consistency, safety, accessibility. But something was also lost. The connection to primal magic, Harry said, understanding dawning. Precisely. She seemed pleased by his grasp of the concept. The founders recognized that their new approach to teaching magic would gradually sever Wizardkin's intuitive connection to magical currents. They preserved the old knowledge, hoping that someday the two approaches might be reconciled. And they left clues for their heirs to find, Harry concluded, thinking of the key with its Potter and Black family crests. Alicia nodded. The vault was designed to open when both necessity and capability aligned. That time appears to be now. Her expression grew more serious. But you are not the only one who has sensed this awakening. Thorn Blackwood has been searching for the founder's legacy for years. I've already encountered him, Harry said. He's dangerous, trying to amplify primal magic beyond safe limits. More dangerous than you realize, Alicia warned. Blackwood was once considered for membership in the Arcanum, before his obsession with power overwhelmed his judgment. He understands the theory of primal magic but lacks the temperament to work with it safely. What exactly is he trying to do? Harry asked, getting to the heart of his concerns. He believes the Ministry's regulation of magic is an artificial constraint on Wizardkin's true potential. In some ways, he's not entirely wrong. She held up a hand as Harry began to protest. The standardization of magic has created limitations. But Blackwood's solution, to unleash primal forces without preparation, would be catastrophic. The disturbances we're detecting in the Earth currents are his attempts to create what he calls nexus points, locations where he can draw massive amounts of power from the natural currents. Alicia's expression was grave. If he succeeds in establishing even one such nexus, he could potentially disrupt magical infrastructure across Britain, rendering standard spells unpredictable or inert while empowering those who practice the old ways. Harry thought of the chaos this would cause, wards failing, magical transportation becoming unreliable, healing spells malfunctioning. The wizarding world depended entirely on standardized magic functioning predictably. We need to stop him, Harry said simply. Yes, Alicia agreed. Which is why I'm here. The Arcanum proposes an alliance, Mr. Potter. We have the knowledge to counter Blackwood's efforts, but we lack someone with your unique capabilities. What capabilities? You bridge worlds, Mr. Potter. Always have. Muggle and magical. Light and dark. Life and death. Her knowing gaze made Harry uncomfortable, as if she could see straight through him. And now, modern and primal magic. The Founder's Wand responded to you for a reason. Harry tensed. How do you know about the wand? Alicia smiled gently. We've watched over the vault for centuries, even without access. The Wand of Foundations is as much a part of our lore as the grimoires themselves. A sudden magical disturbance nearby interrupted their conversation, a pulse of energy that made both of them turn toward the British Museum's direction. He's begun, Alicia said tensely. Sooner than we anticipated. Harry's communication disc heated in his pocket at the same moment. Ron was trying to contact him. I need to go, Harry said, already preparing to apparate. Wait. Alicia pressed a small crystal into his hand. If you truly wish to stop Blackwood, you'll need our help. This will allow you to contact me directly. Harry pocketed the crystal with a nod of thanks, then disapparated, reappearing at the designated Auror apparition point near the British Museum. The scene was one of controlled chaos. Ministry officials had established a perimeter, obliviating Muggle security guards while a team of Aurors attempted to breach a shimmering magical barrier surrounding the museum's main entrance. Ron spotted him immediately, breaking away from the command huddle. Thank Merlin you're here. We can't get through his shields, they're like nothing I've seen before. Blackwood? Harry confirmed. Him and at least 3 others, Ron replied grimly. They broke in about 20 minutes ago. Standard magical alarms didn't trigger, we only knew because the earth current disturbance you detected earlier suddenly spiked. Harry examined the barrier. It pulsed with a golden-red energy that looked eerily similar to the magical currents he'd seen beneath Gringotts. He's channeling power directly from the earth current, Harry realized. That's why conventional counterspells aren't working. How do we get through, then? Ron asked. Harry reached into his pocket, fingers closing around the Founder's wand. Using it publicly would raise questions he wasn't prepared to answer, but the situation demanded its power. Get everyone back, he instructed Ron. I'm going to try something unconventional. Ron's eyes widened slightly at Harry's tone, but he nodded, trusting his friend's judgment. You heard him. All personnel back 30 meters, he shouted to the assembled Aurors. Once the area was clear, Harry drew the Founder's wand, keeping it partially concealed within his sleeve. He recalled a counterbarrier spell from Gryffindor's grimoire, Resolvo Nexus, designed specifically to disrupt magical connections to external power sources. The spell required not just the correct incantation and wand movement but a clear visualization of the magical structure being disrupted. Harry focused his perception as Ravenclaw's grimoire had taught him, seeing beyond the visible barrier to the threads of power feeding it from below. Resolvo Nexus, he intoned, moving the Founder's wand in a complex spiral pattern while visualizing the connection between barrier and earth current severing. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the barrier shuddered, its color shifting from gold red to pale blue before dissolving entirely. The assembled Aurors stared in shock before Ron's voice snapped them back to attention. Forward teams, secure the perimeter. Secondary teams, with me. Harry quickly concealed the Founder's wand, switching back to his Holly wand before joining Ron at the front of the advancing group. They entered the museum cautiously, following the trail of magical disturbance toward the Egyptian antiquities section. The sight that greeted them confirmed Harry's worst fears. Blackwood and three robed figures stood at the center of the Egyptian gallery, surrounding a large stone artifact that Harry recognized as an ancient magical focus, a pre-wand era tool for channeling earth magic. Normally dormant in museum displays, this one now glowed with pulsing energy as Blackwood fed it power. Ministry Aurors. Lower your wands and step away from the artifact. Ron commanded, his Auror training taking over. Blackwood turned, his gaunt face illuminated by the artifact's glow. Recognition and then amusement crossed his features when he spotted Harry. Potter. Right on time. He gestured to the stone focus. Beautiful, isn't it? Created before the artificial divisions between magical disciplines. Before wizards feared their own power. That artifact isn't stable enough to channel that much energy, Harry warned, addressing not just Blackwood but his followers, who might not understand the danger. You're risking everyone in this building, including yourselves. A calculated risk, Blackwood replied calmly. But then, all great magical advancement requires courage. He turned back to the stone focus, which was now vibrating visibly as power flowed into it. Harry could see what Blackwood was attempting. The artifact was positioned directly above a powerful earth current, with runes hastily carved into the museum floor creating a circuit to amplify and redirect the natural flow. The standard Auror approach would be to stun the wizards first and deal with the magical aftermath. But Harry could see the delicate balance of energies Blackwood had created. Interrupting it incorrectly could trigger a catastrophic release. Ron, Harry said quietly, get everyone out except your best shield casters. If that thing destabilizes, we'll need containment more than offense. Ron assessed the situation with experienced eyes, coming to the same conclusion. He began quietly issuing orders, repositioning his team while maintaining the appearance of an attack formation to keep Blackwood's attention. Meanwhile, Harry searched his memory for something in the grimoires that might help. Hufflepuff's earth magic focused on working with natural flows, not against them. He needed a way to safely dissipate the energy Blackwood was gathering. The answer came from an unexpected connection, the containment spell he'd used on Blackwood's previous construct combined with Hufflepuff's earth current sensing. If he could create a controlled path for the energy to return to the natural current. Harry began to move slowly to his right, as if trying to get a better angle for standard Auror spellwork. In reality, he was positioning himself where he could see both the artifact and the floor beneath it. It won't work, Blackwood, he called, buying time as he prepared mentally for the complex spell work. Even if you activate this nexus point, the Ministry has others monitoring the currents now. They'll shut down your operation before it can spread. That was a bluff, but it had the desired effect. Blackwood's expression flickered with uncertainty before hardening into resolve. Then we accelerate the timeline, he said to his followers. Initiate the final sequence. All 4 wizards began casting simultaneously, their wands moving in coordinated patterns that Harry recognized from the grimoires. They were using simplified versions of primal magic, crude but effective for channeling raw power. The artifact's glow intensified dramatically, and Harry felt the floor beneath them tremble as the earth current responded to the massive draw of power. It was now or never. Harry raised his holly wand, knowing it wouldn't be ideal for primal magic but unwilling to reveal the Founder's wand in front of so many witnesses. Focusing his will and drawing deeply on his magical core, he cast a modified version of the containment vortex, Contigo Flumen, creating not a barrier but a channel for the excess energy to flow back into the earth. The spell manifested as a swirling blue-green spiral that extended from the artifact down through the floor. Immediately, the building's shaking lessened as power began to flow through Harry's created path rather than building up in the artifact. Blackwood's head snapped toward Harry, his eyes widening in recognition of the magical technique. That's from Gryffindor's grimoire, he said, momentarily forgetting the danger in his academic excitement. You've actually read it. Used it. His followers looked confused by this exchange, their concentration wavering. The delicate balance of power they'd established began to fluctuate dangerously. Stop casting. Harry shouted to them. The resonance pattern is collapsing. 2 of Blackwood's followers heeded the warning, stepping back from the now violently vibrating artifact. But Blackwood himself pushed forward, placing both hands directly on the stone focus. I can stabilize it, he insisted, his face contorted with effort. The power is already gathered, it just needs proper direction. Harry could see what was happening. Blackwood was attempting to absorb the excess energy directly, using himself as a conduit. It was theoretically possible according to the grimoires, but incredibly dangerous without proper preparation. Blackwood, don't. Harry began, but it was too late. Energy surged from the artifact into the man, causing his body to glow with the same golden red light. For a brief moment, Blackwood stood triumphant, magical power visibly coursing through him. Then his expression changed to one of pain and alarm. Too much, he gasped. Can't contain. Harry acted instinctively, dropping his controlled dissipation spell and lunging forward. Drawing the Founder's wand with his left hand while maintaining his holly wand in his right, he cast 2 spells simultaneously, a shield charm to protect the room's occupants and a primal energy absorption spell from Ravenclaw's grimoire. Absorbio Vorticum, he shouted, pointing the Founder's wand directly at Blackwood. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A stream of golden red energy arced from Blackwood to Harry's wand, which absorbed it like a lightning rod. The power flow was overwhelming. Harry felt as if every cell in his body were simultaneously freezing and burning, his magical core expanding painfully to accommodate the influx. Blackwood collapsed to the floor, drained but alive. The artifact's glow dimmed to a soft shimmer as its connection to the earth current stabilized at a natural level. Harry, however, now faced a different crisis. His body couldn't safely contain the massive amount of primal energy he'd absorbed. His skin glowed with the same golden red light that had engulfed Blackwood, and he could feel his control slipping. Through the haze of power overwhelming his senses, Harry spotted Ron rushing toward him, alarm evident on his face. Stay back. Harry managed to warn, his voice distorted by the energy coursing through him. He needed an outlet, somewhere to direct this power before it tore him apart from within. The grimoires had been clear about the danger of containing more primal energy than one's magical core could naturally handle. With the last of his focus, Harry pointed both wands at the floor and visualized the earth current flowing beneath the museum, the natural channel where this power belonged. Reditus Naturi, he gasped, using a Hufflepuff spell designed to return magical energy to its source. Power flowed from him in a blinding stream, sinking into the floor and rejoining the earth current below. The relief was immediate and overwhelming, like setting down an impossibly heavy weight. Harry's knees buckled, and he would have collapsed entirely if Ron hadn't caught him. What the bloody hell was that? Ron demanded, supporting Harry's weight as Aurors moved in to secure Blackwood and his followers. Earth magic, Harry replied weakly. Not recommended without practice. He managed to conceal the Founder's wand before other Aurors approached, though from Ron's expression, his friend had noticed the second wand and had questions. The aftermath was chaotic but controlled. The Aurors secured Blackwood and his 3 followers, while Ministry specialists arrived to examine the artifact and magically repair damage to the museum. Harry provided a deliberately vague official statement, claiming he'd used specialized counter-curse techniques developed for the Aura department. Robards arrived personally to oversee Blackwood's transport back to Ministry holding cells. Good work, Potter, he said gruffly. Though your methods were unorthodox. The situation required adaptation, Harry replied evenly, still feeling the aftereffects of channeling so much primal energy. His magical core ached like an overused muscle, and his perception seemed strangely heightened, colors more vivid, magical signatures more visible. Blackwood's been asking for you, Robards added, watching Harry carefully. Says you're the only one who understands what he's trying to accomplish. He's desperate and trying to create a connection, Harry dismissed. Standard manipulation tactic. Robards nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. Get some rest. Full debriefing tomorrow at 9. After the scene was secured, Harry and Ron stepped outside for a private conversation. The pre-dawn air was cool on Harry's still feverish skin. You used 2 wands, Ron said without preamble. And that wasn't any magic they taught us in Aura training. Harry nodded, too exhausted for denials. It's from the grimoires. Primal magic, directly connected to the earth currents Blackwood was trying to tap into. And the second wand? Found it in the vault, Harry admitted. Created by the Founder specifically for working with primal magic. Ron processed this, his tactical mind connecting pieces. That's why you were able to counter Blackwood's barrier when none of us could. You're using the same type of magic. Similar, but with better understanding, Harry clarified. Blackwood's approach is all force and domination. The grimoires emphasize harmony and balance. And what happened when you absorbed that energy from him? Harry shuddered at the memory. Primal magic is raw. Powerful in a way modern spells aren't. Taking in that much at once was like trying to contain a flood with your bare hands. Ron looked troubled. Be careful, mate. I've seen what happens to wizards who mess with magic beyond their control. I know, Harry assured him. I'm learning gradually, following the grimoire's guidance. They parted ways with an agreement to meet later that day after Harry had rested. Back at Grimmauld Place, however, Harry found sleep impossible despite his exhaustion. The residual energy from the museum incident had left his magical senses heightened to an uncomfortable degree. He could feel the house's protective wards as a physical pressure and sensed the faint magical signatures of every enchanted object around him. Creature appeared with a steaming mug that smelled of herbs and something less identifiable. For magical overflow, the elf explained. Old family recipe. Helps wizards who touch too much power at once. Harry accepted the drink gratefully, not questioning how Creature knew exactly what he needed. The potion tasted bitter but brought immediate relief, dampening his overstimulated magical senses to manageable levels. Thank you, Harry said sincerely. How did you know? Creature's ancient face creased in what might have been a smile. House elves remember the old days, when wizards worked with earth magic regularly. Many would come home, glowing. He made a dismissive gesture. Modern wizards have forgotten how to ground themselves properly. This casual reference to historical magical practices Harry had only just discovered in the grimoires was yet another reminder of how much wizarding knowledge had been lost or compartmentalized over the centuries. Creature, have you ever heard of the Arcanum? Harry asked on impulse. The elf's ears twitched nervously. Secret wizards who watch and wait. The most noble house of Black had dealings with them, long ago. His voice dropped to a whisper. They keep balance, they say. But balance means different things to different minds. Before Harry could press for more details, a silvery otter Patronus floated through the wall, Hermione's urgent message, Harry, come to the vault immediately. I've found something about the Scottish disturbance. It's worse than we thought. Despite his exhaustion, Harry forced himself to his feet. The magical restorative creature had provided gave him enough energy to function, though his magical core still felt tender, like a bruise. He arrived at Gringotts as the bank was opening for regular business, using the special access protocol to avoid the main lobby. Grimstone met him at the heart chamber, his expression even more severe than usual. Miss Granger arrived 3 hours ago, the goblin reported. She has not emerged since. Harry found Hermione in the vault, surrounded by open books and scrolls, her hair more chaotic than usual and dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd worked through the night. I found references to the Scottish location, she said without preamble, pointing to an ancient map spread across the floor. It's not just any convergence point of Earth currents. According to Ravenclaw's notes, it's the site of an ancient magical wellspring, a place where primal magic naturally surfaces without channeling. Like a magical hot spring? Harry asked, trying to understand. More like a geyser, Hermione corrected. Normally dormant, but when activated, incredibly powerful. The founders sealed it during their lifetime because it was becoming unstable. And now Blackwood's followers are trying to unseal it, Harry concluded grimly, remembering the red pulsing light on the crystal map. Exactly. But here's the truly concerning part. She pointed to a passage in Slytherin's grimoire, which Harry hadn't yet studied in detail. According to Slytherin, this wellspring doesn't just provide power, it temporarily thins the boundary between magical currents and physical reality. Meaning that if fully activated, it could potentially allow the direct manifestation of magic without spells or wands at all, raw intent shaping reality. Her expression was grave. Imagine magical accidents like those caused by untrained children, but at a massive scale and with the power of a natural disaster. The implications were staggering. Untrained wizards sometimes caused magical outbursts when emotional, windows shattering, objects flying. A wellspring of primal magic could amplify such effects to catastrophic levels. We need to stop them, Harry said. We need help, Hermione countered. This is beyond just us, Harry. Even with the grimoires and your developing skill with primal magic, we're talking about a natural phenomenon the founders themselves considered dangerous enough to seal. Harry thought of Alicia and the Arcanum. I might know who to ask. Using the crystal Alicia had given him, Harry sent a message explaining the situation. The response was immediate, a shimmering portal appearing directly within the vault chamber. Alicia stepped through, accompanied by an elderly wizard whose lined face suggested both great age and greater knowledge. Harry Potter, Alicia acknowledged with a nod. This is Elder Caius, our foremost expert on magical wellsprings. Hermione stared in fascination at the portal, which closed behind the visitors. That's not apparition or flow travel, she observed. An old method of transportation, Elder Caius explained, his voice surprisingly strong for his apparent age. Following the natural channels between places rather than forcing passage through space. Harry quickly brought them up to date on recent events, including Blackwood's capture and the continued activity at the Scottish site. Blackwood was a distraction, Alicia concluded. He allowed himself to be captured to focus attention on London while his followers continued the main work in Scotland. The timing is deliberate, Caius added, examining the crystal map. The wellspring naturally grows more active during certain astronomical alignments. The spring equinox approaches, 3 days from now, the wellspring will reach its most accessible state. If they remove the founder's seals during that window, Hermione said, connecting the pieces, the resulting magical surge could affect Earth currents across Britain. Across Europe, Caius corrected grimly. The founders chose that location for containment precisely because it connects to major current systems throughout the continent. The scope of the threat continued to expand, making Harry's head spin despite Creature's restorative. How do we stop it? Caius studied him with piercing blue eyes. The Wand of Foundations was created specifically to work with such primal forces. It's not just a tool but a key, designed to lock as well as unlock the deepest magics. You knew about the wand? Hermione asked, surprised. The Arcanum has preserved knowledge of the Founder's work for centuries, Alicia explained. Though even we didn't know the exact location of the vault until it opened to Harry. What's your interest in this? Harry asked directly. Why help us? Balance, Alicia replied simply. Not suppression, not exploitation, balance. Primal magic isn't evil or good, but it requires respect and understanding. Blackwood seeks to force what must be persuaded, to dominate what must be partnered with. Harry nodded, recognizing the same philosophy expressed in the grimoires. So what's our plan? Elder Caius gestured to Slytherin's grimoire. The same text that describes the wellspring also contains the sealing ritual the Founders used. With the Wand of Foundations and proper preparation, we can reinforce their work before Blackwood's followers completely dismantle it. But we'll need to move quickly, Alicia added. And you'll need more training with primal magic before attempting such complex work. I can help with the theoretical aspects, Hermione offered, already turning to the relevant passages in the grimoire. I've been comparing the Founders' approaches to identify the core principles. And I can teach you the practical techniques, Alicia said to Harry. The Arcanum has preserved certain training methods specifically for working with earth currents. They developed a plan. Harry would spend the next day learning the necessary magical techniques from Alicia, while Hermione and Elder Caius prepared the ritual components. Meanwhile, Ron would coordinate with trusted Aurors to establish a perimeter around the Scottish site without alerting the Ministry to the full situation. As preparations began, Harry felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The magic he was learning was transforming his understanding of what was possible, connecting him to a deeper, more intuitive relationship with magical forces than he'd ever experienced at Hogwarts or as an Auror. That evening, Alicia took Harry to a secluded location in the Welsh countryside, a small stone circle hidden from Muggle view by ancient protective spells. Here, she explained, the earth currents ran close to the surface, making it an ideal training ground. The first principle of working with primal magic, she instructed, is recognizing that you are not separate from it. Modern spellcasting treats magic as a tool to be wielded. The older approach understands it as a conversation between equals. She demonstrated by placing her hands on one of the standing stones. Rather than casting a specific spell, she closed her eyes and seemed to listen. After a moment, the stone began to glow softly from within, responding to her unspoken communion. The stone remembers being part of the earth, Alicia explained. It responds to recognition of that connection. Harry tried the same approach with another stone, focusing not on imposing his will but on sensing the latent magic already present. At first, nothing happened. Then, gradually, he became aware of a subtle vibration beneath his palms, a magical signature distinct from his own but somehow familiar. That's it, Alicia encouraged. Don't try to control it. Align with it. As Harry relaxed into this new perspective, the stone began to warm beneath his touch, a soft golden glow emanating from its core. The sensation was entirely different from casting spells, less directive but somehow more profound, as if you were participating in magic rather than generating it. This is the foundation of earth current work, Alicia explained. Recognizing and aligning with what already exists rather than forcing change. They continued practicing with increasingly complex exercises, sensing the flow of currents beneath the ground, redirecting small streams of energy between stones, creating temporary reservoirs of power that could be released in controlled bursts. By dawn, Harry had progressed from basic sensing to actively working with the currents, though the effort left him magically drained once again. The Founder's wand proved invaluable, serving as both focus and translator between his magical intent and the natural flows. You learn quickly, Alicia observed as they prepared to return to London. The founders chose well. I wasn't chosen, Harry objected. I just happened to find the key. Alicia smiled knowingly. Do you truly believe that was coincidence? The vault remained hidden for centuries, Harry Potter. It revealed itself to you specifically, at this specific moment in magical history. I don't believe in destiny anymore, Harry said firmly, thinking of prophecies and horcruxes and all the ways his life had been shaped by forces beyond his control. I believe in choices. Then consider that magic itself makes choices, Alicia suggested. The earth currents, the wellsprings, the natural flows, they respond differently to different intentions. Perhaps they chose to respond to yours. The idea of magic as a semi-conscious force with its own agency was unsettling but aligned with what Harry had been experiencing. The grimoires described magic not as a tool but as a collaborator, something that worked with the caster rather than simply obeying commands. Back at Grimmauld Place, Harry found Luna waiting for him, feeding what appeared to be small pieces of fruit to an invisible creature. The blibbering humdingers are very sensitive to primal magic, she explained when she noticed his questioning look. They've been following you since you found the vault. Too tired to question Luna's perpetual certainty about invisible creatures, Harry simply nodded. What brings you here, Luna? I've been studying the connection between magical creatures and earth currents, she replied, her dreamy tone not quite hiding the sharp intelligence beneath. Did you know that certain beings can naturally sense and interact with primal magic? House elves, centaurs, thestrals. Creature mentioned something similar, Harry recalled. They never forgot what wizards did, Luna said, suddenly serious. When the founders standardized magical education, they severed most wizards' natural connection to primal currents. But magical creatures maintained that connection. This perspective added a new dimension to Harry's understanding of magical history. You're saying the division between wizard magic and creature magic is artificial? Created by our educational approach? Luna nodded. The grimoires suggest as much, don't they? Particularly Hufflepuff's notes on working with magical beings. Harry hadn't reached that section yet, but Luna's insight made intuitive sense given what he'd already learned. How does this help with the wellspring situation? I think we might need allies beyond just wizards, Luna suggested. Beings who naturally understand primal magic could help stabilize the wellspring during resealing. It was an unconventional approach but potentially valuable. Harry sent messages to Ron and Hermione suggesting this addition to their plan. The next morning brought news from Ron. Ministry intelligence had detected unusual magical activity in the Scottish location, exactly where the crystal map indicated the wellspring was located. Satellite imagery showed what appeared to be a makeshift camp and evidence of excavation. Blackwood's group is larger than we thought, Ron reported when they gathered at Grimmauld Place to finalize their plans. At least a dozen wizards, working in shifts. And they've made progress. Our magical sensors show they've already removed 2 of the Founder's 7 seals. With each seal removed, the wellspring grows more active, Elder Caius warned. The final seals will be more difficult to breach, but if they succeed during the equinox alignment. They won't, Harry said with determination, spreading a map of the area across the table. We go tomorrow, a day before the equinox. Ron's team will secure the perimeter and handle Blackwood's followers. Luna will coordinate with the Centaur representative she's contacted. Hermione, Elder Caius and I will focus on reinforcing the remaining seals and replacing the broken ones. And I will manage the earth current flows, Alicia added. As the disruption increases, the surrounding currents will need stabilization to prevent cascade effects. They spent the rest of the day in intensive preparation. Harry practiced the complex sealing ritual from Slytherin's grimoire while Hermione prepared the necessary components, specially charged crystals, runic inscriptions, and a potion containing ingredients so rare that Elder Caius had to provide them from Arcanum reserves. Luna returned from the Forbidden Forest with confirmation that a small group of centaurs would meet them at the site, led by an elder named Forenza, a name Harry recognized from his Hogwarts days. As evening fell, Harry found himself standing alone in his study, the Founder's wand in one hand and his holly wand in the other. Each represented a different approach to magic, structured versus intuitive, standardized versus primal. Yet they didn't feel contradictory in his hands, but complementary. Perhaps that was the true legacy the Founders had preserved, not just ancient spells but the possibility of reconciliation between magical traditions that had grown apart over centuries. A soft pop announced Creature's arrival. "Master has visitors," the elf announced. "The wolf teacher and the metamorph child." Harry smiled at Creature's descriptions. "Remus and Teddy are here." In the sitting room, Creature confirmed. "Creature has provided refreshments." Harry found Remus Lupin looking tired but well, his graying hair offset by the vibrant turquoise currently favored by 6-year-old Teddy, who launched himself at Harry with characteristic enthusiasm. "Uncle Harry! Look what I can do now." The boy scrunched up his face in concentration, and his hair shifted through a rainbow of colors before settling on jet black that matched Harry's own. Impressive control, Harry praised, genuinely impressed by his godson's developing metamorphmagus abilities. "Sorry to drop in unannounced," Remus said after Teddy had run off to explore the house under Creature's reluctant supervision. "But Minerva contacted me with concerns about unusual magical disturbances affecting the Hogwarts wards. Given our history, I thought I should check if you were involved." Harry hesitated only briefly before deciding that Remus, of all people, deserved the truth. The former professor had extensive knowledge of magical theory and, as a werewolf, a unique perspective on different forms of magic. "It's complicated," Harry began, before explaining the discovery of the vault, the grimoires, and the current threat posed by the wellspring. Remus listened without interruption, his expression shifting from surprise to scholarly interest to concern as the explanation progressed. "Primal magic," he said thoughtfully when Harry finished. "There were always rumors in the werewolf community about the old ways, magic that worked differently, more intuitively with natural cycles. Many believed it might offer better solutions for controlling transformations than modern potions. The grimoires do include sections on magical transformations," Harry confirmed. "Particularly Hufflepuff's work on natural magic." Remus's eyes lit with academic interest. "After this wellspring situation is resolved, I'd be very interested in examining those sections." "Of course," Harry agreed, then paused. "Actually, your perspective might be valuable for tomorrow's operation. Werewolves maintain a connection to natural magic even in human form, don't they?" "To some degree," Remus acknowledged. "We sense certain magical currents more acutely than ordinary wizards, particularly around celestial events like the full moon." He studied Harry's expression. "You're suggesting I join you tomorrow?" "If you're willing," Harry said. "Your experience with defense against the dark arts and your natural sensitivity to magical currents could be invaluable." Remus considered this, clearly weighing his responsibilities to Teddy against the potential threat. "Andromeda can watch Teddy," he decided finally. "And if this wellspring poses the danger you describe, I'd rather help contain it than wonder if I could have made a difference." With Remus added to their team, the final preparations moved forward. That night, Harry reviewed all 4 grimoires one last time, focusing on the sections most relevant to sealing primal magic sources. Each founder had contributed different aspects to the original ritual: Gryffindor's protective barriers, Ravenclaw's magical theory, Hufflepuff's natural harmonization, and Slytherin's binding techniques. The complexity was daunting, but with the team they'd assembled, Harry felt cautiously optimistic. The founders had managed this sealing with just 4 wizards. Their group would include not only skilled modern wizards but representatives of the arcanum and magical beings with natural connections to primal forces. As he finally prepared for sleep, Harry felt the founder's wand pulse warmly in his hand, as if responding to his determination. Tomorrow they would face Blackwood's followers and attempt to reseal a wellspring of primal magic that had been contained for a millennium. The balance of magical forces hung in the balance, and Harry found himself at the center once again, not because of prophecy or destiny, but because he had chosen to accept the responsibility that came with discovery. Just before dawn, a message arrived from Ron. Ministry sensors had detected a massive spike in magical activity at the wellspring site. Blackwood's followers had accelerated their efforts, perhaps aware that opposition was gathering. "They've broken the third seal," Ron's Patronus reported. "Something's happening up there, strange lights, fluctuating magical signatures. We need to move now." The timetable suddenly compressed. Harry sent urgent messages to the team. Within an hour, they had gathered at the designated apparition point, a small wizard village near the Scottish border, from which they would travel by more concealed means to the wellspring site. "The situation has escalated," Harry briefed them, showing the latest magical readings Ron had sent. "The wellspring is becoming active ahead of schedule. We need to reach the site and secure it immediately. The earth currents are already responding to the disruption," Alicia confirmed, her expression troubled. "I can feel fluctuations as far south as London." With no time to lose, they departed in 3 groups, Ron leading the Auror team to establish a perimeter, Luna and Remus coordinating with the centaurs who would meet them near the site, and Harry with Hermione, Elder Caius and Alicia focusing on the sealing ritual preparations. As they approached the remote highland location, Harry could feel the magical disturbance growing stronger, a pressure in the air that made his teeth ache and caused the Founder's wand to vibrate in his pocket. Even without specialized detection spells, the wrongness was palpable. From their concealed position on a ridge overlooking the site, they could see Blackwood's followers, at least 15 wizards and witches working around what appeared to be an ancient stone circle partially embedded in the hillside. The stones glowed with an unnatural blue-white light, pulsing in irregular patterns as magic visibly leaked from the earth between them. "The 4th seal is failing," Elder Caius observed grimly. "They've accelerated the natural process. The equinox alignment is still a day away, but they're forcing the wellspring open through artificial means." Harry scanned the area, noting the positions of Blackwood's followers and the magical constructs they had erected around the stone circle. Most concerning was a towering framework of metal and crystal that seemed to be channeling and amplifying the leaking magic, a more sophisticated version of the array Blackwood had attempted at the British Museum. Ron's team was moving into position around the perimeter, disillusioned but visible to Harry through a communication charm they'd established. The centaurs, led by Firenze, had arrived on the far side of the ridge, their natural magic partially shielding them from detection. "We need a diversion," Harry decided, assessing the situation. "Something to draw their attention while we get closer to the central stones." Remus, who had joined them after coordinating with the centaurs, suggested a strategy. "The centaurs can create a natural magical disturbance to the north, something that will read as a response from the earth currents rather than an attack. While Blackwood's people investigate, Ron's team can move in from the south and east." "And what about the sealing ritual?" Hermione asked, unpacking the carefully prepared components. "We'll need to get directly to the center of the stone circle," Elder Caius explained. "The original seals are anchored there, at the wellspring's core." Harry nodded, finalizing the plan. "Alicia and Caius will focus on stabilizing the remaining seals. Hermione and I will recreate the broken ones using the Founder's ritual. Ron's team handles Blackwood's followers, while Luna and Remus work with the centaurs to manage the surrounding magical currents." With roles assigned, they moved into action. The centaurs began their diversion, a ceremonial invocation of earth magic that sent tremors through the highland ground and created spectacular auroral lights in the morning sky to the north. As predicted, several of Blackwood's followers moved to investigate this apparent natural phenomenon. Ron's Auror seized the opportunity, moving swiftly to stun and bind the wizards remaining at the perimeter of the site. The operation was proceeding smoothly until one of Blackwood's more alert followers spotted the attack and raised an alarm. Chaos erupted as defensive spells flashed across the clearing. The wellspring's leaking magic interacted unpredictably with conventional spellwork, shield charms manifested as solid crystal barriers, stunning spells left swirling vortices of colored light where they hit, and the very air became charged with magical potential. Harry, Hermione, Alicia and Elder Caius used the confusion to approach the stone circle, protected by both conventional shields and the more fluid defensive magic Harry had learned from the grimoires. As they reached the edge of the circle, a powerful figure stepped forward to block their path, a which Harry recognized from Blackwood's file as Mara Sallow, his primary research assistant before his imprisonment. "Potter," she acknowledged coldly. "Blackwood said you'd come. Said you'd try to stop progress, just like the Ministry." "This isn't progress," Harry countered, noting the unstable pulsing of the stones behind her. "You're tearing open a seal the Founders created for good reason. The wellspring isn't stable." "It was never meant to be caged," Sallow replied, raising her wand. "Magic was free once. Will be again." She cast not a standard spell but a wave of primal force drawn directly from the leaking wellspring, raw power with minimal shaping. Harry recognized the technique from Gryffindor's warnings about improper use of earth magic. Instinctively, he drew the Founder's wand, meeting her attack not with a counterspell but with a redirection, guiding her uncontrolled magic back into the natural current flowing beneath them. Sallow's eyes widened at the sight of the Founder's wand. "The wand of foundations," she breathed. He was right about everything. "Listen to me," Harry tried again, maintaining the redirection while the others prepared to move around them toward the center stones. Blackwood misunderstood the grimoires. "This magic requires balance, not forced liberation. You're creating instability that could harm everyone, including yourselves." For a moment, doubt flickered across her face as she observed how Harry worked with rather than against the magical flow. Then her expression hardened. Pretty words from someone born to privilege. The magical elite have always controlled access to true power. She renewed her attack with greater intensity, drawing more deeply on the wellspring's energy. The raw magic surged between them, creating a vortex of swirling power that distorted the very air. Harry maintained his defensive posture, not attacking but continuously redirecting her increasingly erratic magic back to the earth. He could have countered more aggressively, but something in Ravenclaw's writings about magical conflict had resonated deeply, the principle that opposition often strengthened what it sought to defeat. "I'm not trying to control this power," Harry called over the roar of magical energy between them. "I'm trying to respect it. There's a difference." Around them, the battle continued. Ron's Aurors had secured most of the perimeter, while Luna and the Centaurs worked to stabilize the surrounding magical currents. Hermione, Alicia, and Elder Caius had reached the center of the stone circle and begun preparing the sealing ritual. But the wellspring's energy was growing more volatile by the minute. The fourth seal failed completely with a thunderous crack, sending a pillar of blue-white light shooting skyward. The magical backlash knocked everyone nearby off their feet, including Harry and Sallow. As Harry regained his footing, he saw that the situation had deteriorated dramatically. The metal and crystal framework Blackwood's followers had constructed was now fully active, channeling the wellspring's unleashed power into what appeared to be a network of receivers positioned around Britain, a system designed to broadcast primal magic through existing earth currents to distant locations. "You can't control this," Harry shouted to Sallow, who was staring in horror at the increasingly unstable manifestation. It was clear that even she hadn't expected this level of volatile response. "It wasn't supposed to happen this fast," she admitted, backing away from the violent energy discharges now erupting from the central stones. Blackwood said the equinox alignment would provide natural stabilization. "He was wrong," Harry said simply. "Or he lied. Either way, we need to seal this now before it cascades completely." Whether convinced by Harry's words or the obvious danger, Sallow lowered her wand. "How?" "Help us disconnect your amplification framework," Harry directed. "It's accelerating the destabilization." With Sallow's reluctant assistance, they began dismantling the complex magical framework while Hermione, Alicia, and Elder Caius prepared the sealing ritual at the center. The next hour was a desperate race against magical catastrophe. As the wellspring grew increasingly unstable, earth currents across Scotland began to fluctuate. Reports arrived via Patronus of magical disturbances in wizarding communities hundreds of miles away, wards failing, enchantments behaving unpredictably, magical creatures becoming agitated. At the center of the stone circle, Hermione had established the ritual configuration using the components they prepared, 7 crystalline anchors positioned precisely around the now visible wellspring core, a swirling vortex of primal magic rising from a small pool of what appeared to be liquid light. "It's ready," she called to Harry. "But we need more power to contain what's already escaped." Harry looked around at their assembled allies, Aurors, Arcana members, Centaurs, and even Blackwood's converted followers, all working together to prevent magical disaster. An idea formed, based on what he'd learned about the original sealing ritual. The founders combined their different magical approaches, he explained quickly. "We need to do the same, not just wizard magic but all magical traditions present here." Under Harry's coordination, they formed a complex magical circuit, Centaurs providing their earth-based magic, Remus contributing the natural magical sensitivity of his werewolf nature, the Arcanum members offering their specialized knowledge, and the Aurors adding the structured power of modern spellcasting. At the center, Harry took his position with the Founder's wand extended over the wellspring. Hermione, Alicia, Elder Caius, Luna, Ron, and even Sallow joined hands around him, creating a circle of combined magical intent. Harry began the incantation from Slytherin's grimoire, his voice steady despite the chaotic energies swirling around them, Fons Principium, Flumen Potestas, Reverti ad Turam, Menir in Equilibrium. Each phrase triggered one of the crystal anchors, which began to glow with corresponding colors, red, yellow, blue, green, white, black, and gold. The Founder's wand channeled their combined magic, creating a containment pattern that matched the original design but incorporated the additional magical traditions represented in their circle. As the ritual progressed, Harry felt something extraordinary, the wellspring itself responding to their unified approach. Unlike Blackwood's attempt to dominate and exploit, their sealing ritual acknowledged the wellspring's nature while guiding it back toward balance. The liquid light at the center began to spin in the opposite direction, gradually receding back into the earth. The violent discharges of energy slowed and then stopped entirely. The blue-white pillar collapsed inward, returning to its source. With a final surge of combined magic channeled through the Founder's wand, Harry completed the sealing incantation. The 7 crystal anchors flashed brilliantly and then sank into the ground, establishing new seals that incorporated elements of all magical traditions present. The wellspring settled into dormancy, the stones around it cooling from bright blue-white to a soft, steady amber glow that pulsed in rhythm with the Earth's natural magical current. Exhausted but triumphant, Harry lowered the Founder's wand. Around him, their diverse coalition of magical beings and practitioners stood in amazed silence, witnessing the restoration of balance where chaos had threatened. "It's done," Elder Caius confirmed after examining the new seals. "And stronger than before. This sealing incorporates multiple magical traditions, it should be more resilient against future tampering." In the aftermath, Ron's Aurors took Blackwood's remaining followers into custody, though with Sallow's cooperation, they agreed to pursue reduced charges in exchange for information about Blackwood's broader network and plans. The Centaurs departed with a formal acknowledgement of the magical debt between their communities, a rare gesture that Forenza explained represented their recognition of Harry's respect for different magical traditions. As they prepared to return to London, Luna approached Harry with her characteristic dreamy smile. "The blibbering humdingers are very pleased," she informed him seriously. "They say the currents are singing properly again." Harry found he could almost believe he heard it too, a subtle harmony in the magical atmosphere that had been discordant hours earlier. Back in London, they gathered at Grimmauld Place to assess the broader situation. Reports from across Britain confirmed that the magical disruptions had ceased, with most wizards unaware of how close they had come to a fundamental destabilization of magical infrastructure. "The Ministry is calling it a series of magical weather anomalies," Ron reported with a tired smile. "Robards knows better, of course, but he's allowing the official explanation to stand. Fewer awkward questions that way." "And Blackwood?" Harry asked. "Still in custody, still demanding to speak with you," Ron replied. "Says he has information you'll want to hear." Harry nodded thoughtfully. Despite everything, he remained curious about Blackwood's research and how the former unspeakable had learned about the Vault of Foundations in the first place. "I'll speak with him tomorrow," he decided. "For now, we all need rest." As their allies departed, Hermione lingered, her expression thoughtful as she helped Harry organize the grimoires and notes they'd brought back from the operation. "You know," she said finally, "what we did today was remarkable not just magically but culturally. Wizards, centaurs, a werewolf, even reformed followers of Blackwood, all contributing different magical perspectives to solve a problem none could have addressed alone." Harry considered this. That seems to be what the founders intended with the grimoires, not just preserving old spells but encouraging an integration of magical approaches. "Exactly," Hermione agreed enthusiastically. "Modern magical education is efficient but narrow. These grimoires suggest a broader, more inclusive approach that acknowledges the value of different magical traditions." "Are you suggesting we revolutionize magical education based on thousand-year-old books?" Harry asked with a tired smile. "Not overnight," Hermione clarified. "But perhaps gradually reintroducing some of these concepts. The connection to natural magical currents, the more intuitive approach to spellcasting, it could enhance rather than replace current methods." It was an intriguing possibility, one that aligned with what Harry had been experiencing as he worked with the grimoires. The primal magic didn't contradict his Hogwarts education but complemented it, adding dimensions of flexibility and intuition to the structured framework he'd learned. The following morning, Harry visited the Ministry holding cells where Blackwood was detained. The former unspeakable looked better than during their previous encounters, less manic, more focused, though still with that intense academic interest in his eyes. "Potter," Blackwood greeted him without hostility. "They tell me you resealed the wellspring. Using the Founder's methods but with improvements. How do you know that?" Harry asked, taking a seat opposite the magical barrier that contained Blackwood's cell. "I feel it," Blackwood replied simply. "Once you've worked with primal magic long enough, you develop a sensitivity to its patterns. The new sealing has elegance. Multiple magical signatures harmonized rather than merely combined." Despite himself, Harry was curious. "You understand the theory better than most. Why push for destabilization when you must have known the risks?" Blackwood sighed, suddenly looking older and tired. "It was never about destabilization as an end goal. That was merely the necessary first step toward reintegration." "Reintegration of what?" "Of magical knowledge," Blackwood explained, leaning forward. "The separation between standard magic and primal currents is artificial, created during the Founder's era and calcified over centuries. I sought to force a reconnection, to require the magical community to acknowledge and adapt to the older powers. By causing a crisis," Harry noted. "By removing the option of continued ignorance," Blackwood countered. "Though I miscalculated the wellspring's volatility when tampered with directly. My original research suggested a more gradual awakening." Harry studied the man carefully. There was a twisted logic to Blackwood's approach, though his methods had been dangerously reckless. "There are safer ways to reintroduce this knowledge," Harry said finally. Blackwood's eyes narrowed with sudden interest. "You're considering it, aren't you? Using what you found not just to contain the old magic but to reintegrate it." Rather than confirming this, Harry asked the question that had been bothering him. "How did you know about the Vault of Foundations in the first place? The grimoires? The wellspring?" "Ah." Blackwood sat back. "That's why I wanted to speak with you. There are others who seek what you found, Potter. The Department of Mysteries has a sealed section dedicated to the Founder's lost works. I discovered references during my employment there, fragmentary, incomplete, but enough to start my search. And now they're looking for the vault," Harry concluded, remembering the unspeakable who had tested his wards. Blackwood nodded. "Not the department officially, a faction within it that believes certain magical knowledge should remain under Ministry control. They've been watching for signs of the vault's discovery for generations. This aligned with what Harry had already suspected and explained the modified unspeakable tattoo he'd glimpsed. A splinter group operating within the department itself, with their own agenda regarding ancient magic. Why tell me this? Harry asked. Because despite our differences, I believe the knowledge in those grimoires belongs to all wizard kind, not locked away by the Ministry, not hoarded by the Arcanum, and not buried beneath Gringotts. Blackwood met his gaze directly. What will you do with it, Potter? Now that you've contained the immediate threat. It was the question Harry had been asking himself since the wellspring was resealed. The grimoires contained knowledge that could transform magical understanding, but releasing it haphazardly could cause the very destabilization they just prevented. I'm going to study it, Harry said finally. Understand it fully. Then find a way to share what can be safely integrated while protecting what needs more careful handling. Blackwood studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. A measured approach. Perhaps wiser than my own. As Harry prepared to leave, Blackwood offered one final warning. The faction within the department won't stop searching, Potter. And they're not the only ones interested. The magical world is full of groups with their own designs on primal power. I'm aware, Harry replied, thinking of the multiple interests already converging around his discovery. But the grimoires chose to reveal themselves now, for whatever reason. I intend to honor that choice by handling them responsibly. Back at Grimmauld Place, Harry found Hermione, Ron and Luna waiting with unexpected news. The Arcanum has extended an offer, Hermione explained, showing him a formally sealed letter. They're proposing a collaborative approach to studying the grimoires, combining their historical knowledge with our fresh perspectives. And Hogwarts is involved too, Luna added dreamily. McGonagall sent an owl. Apparently, the castle itself has been responding to the reawakening of primal magic. Some of the oldest enchantments are showing new behaviors. Ron looked skeptical but supportive. It's up to you, mate. The grimoires found you, after all. Harry considered the converging threads, the Arcanum with their centuries of guardianship, Hogwarts with its direct connection to the Founders, his own circle of trusted friends with their diverse talents, and even reformed members of Blackwood's group who understood the theoretical aspects. Perhaps the answer wasn't keeping the knowledge contained or releasing it widely, but creating a new approach altogether, a balanced integration that honored both magical traditions. Tell the Arcanum I'm interested in collaboration, but on equal terms, Harry decided. And let McGonagall know we'll need access to the Founders' original workspaces at Hogwarts. I think it's time these different magical approaches were reconciled rather than separated. As his friends departed to relay these messages, Harry returned to the grimoires, the Founder's wand warm in his hand as he opened Hufflepuff's volume to a previously unexamined section titled, The Harmony of Magical Traditions. The first line seemed particularly relevant to their current situation. Magic is neither singular nor fixed but flows in many currents through our world. The wise practitioner does not claim one stream as superior but learns to navigate between them, drawing from each according to need and purpose. In this harmony of approaches lies magic's truest expression, not domination but partnership, not control but conversation. With renewed purpose, Harry began to read, knowing that the journey of discovery was only just beginning. The balance between magical traditions that had been lost for a millennium might finally be restored, not through crisis as Blackwood had attempted, but through careful, collaborative integration. The Founder's legacy wasn't just ancient spells but a vision for magical practice that transcended the artificial boundaries that had developed over centuries. And now, Harry realized, he had the opportunity to help fulfill that vision, bringing primal and structured magic back into harmony for the benefit of the entire wizarding world. Chapter 3, Primal Forces. 3 weeks after the Wellspring incident, Harry sat cross-legged in the center of the Vault of Foundations, all 4 grimoires open around him in a circle. The Founder's wand lay across his palms as he meditated, eyes closed, feeling the currents of magic flowing beneath Gringotts. You're getting better at this, Alicia observed from where she sat nearby, monitoring his progress. Your magical signature is adapting to the primal currents rather than fighting them. Harry opened his eyes, the faint golden glow fading from his skin as he relaxed his connection to the earth magic. It feels more natural now. Less like casting spells and more like having a conversation. Exactly as it should be. Alicia rose gracefully, her arcanum robes shimmering with subtle enchantments. I believe you're ready for the next phase of training. Over the past weeks, Harry had divided his time between his aura duties, studying the grimoires, and training with various mentors. Alicia taught him the arcanum's techniques for safely channeling primal energy. Luna helped him understand the intuitive aspects of magic that defied logical explanation. Even Blackwood, from his ministry cell, provided valuable theoretical insights during Harry's authorized visits. The alliance Harry had proposed was bearing fruit. A small, trusted circle now had access to the vault, each bringing unique perspectives to the study of the Founder's legacy. McGonagall had opened the Founder's original workrooms at Hogwarts, revealing additional notes and artifacts that complemented the grimoires. The Arcanum had shared historical records documenting the transition from primal to structured magic during the Founder's era. Most surprising was the involvement of Director Grimstone, who had gradually shifted from suspicious guardian to interested participant. Goblin magic had always maintained stronger connections to earth currents, and the director recognized the potential for improved wizard-goblin magical cooperation. What's the next phase? Harry asked, carefully closing the grimoires. Integration, Alicia replied. You've learned to work with primal magic separately from your standard spellcasting. Now you must learn to blend them, using both simultaneously for effects neither could achieve alone. Before Harry could respond, the vault door shimmered, admitting Hermione. Her expression immediately told him something was wrong. We've got trouble, she announced, setting down a heavy stack of parchment covered in complex magical diagrams. 3 new disturbances in the earth currents since midnight. London, Cornwall, and the Orkney Islands. Harry frowned. Natural fluctuations? Definitely not, Hermione replied. They're showing the same signature as the wellspring disturbance, but on a smaller scale. Someone's deliberately agitating the currents. Blackwood's still in custody, Harry noted. His known associates too. It's not them, Hermione confirmed. Ron checked. This is someone new, or someone who's been waiting for an opportunity. Harry exchanged glances with Alicia, whose normally serene expression had hardened into concern. The Department of Mysteries faction Blackwood mentioned, he suggested. Possibly, Alicia acknowledged. Or one of the other groups monitoring the re-emergence of primal magic. The wizarding world has many secret societies beyond the Arcanum, not all with balanced intentions. Harry gathered the grimoires into his moleskin pouch, which had been specially expanded to hold all 4 massive tomes. We need more information. These disturbances, what exactly are they doing to the currents? Hermione spread out a map on which glowing lines represented the major earth currents flowing beneath Britain. 3 points pulsed with an angry red light, disrupting the natural golden flow. They're creating what Ravenclaw's grimoire calls reversal nodes, points where the current's natural direction is forced to change, Hermione explained. It's like damming a river and making it flow backward. Which causes pressure to build up elsewhere in the system, Alicia added grimly. If these disruptions continue, we could see magical surges in unexpected locations, potentially in populous wizarding areas. Harry studied the map, noting how the disturbed currents connected to other lines that flowed beneath major magical settlements. This isn't random. These locations were chosen to affect specific targets. His aura training kicked in as he analyzed the pattern. Hogsmeade, Diagon Alley, and the Ministry itself all sit on currents that connect to these disruption points. Someone's setting up a magical attack on our infrastructure. But to what end? Hermione questioned. Destabilizing magical society doesn't benefit anyone. Unless you're positioning yourself as the solution, Harry realized, remembering conversations with Blackwood. Creating a crisis that only practitioners of primal magic can resolve. Alicia's expression darkened. There have always been factions within magical society who believe the old ways should return by force if necessary. The Arcanum has opposed such groups for centuries. We need to investigate these sites directly, Harry decided. See exactly what's causing the disruptions and neutralize them before they cascade. They left the vault, Harry pausing to secure it with both standard and primal protections. In the main level of Gringotts, they met Ron, who had brought additional news. The minister called an emergency meeting of department heads, he reported. Magical disturbances are affecting critical ministry systems. The Flua network is experiencing fluctuations, and the security wards around Level 9 are destabilizing. Level 9, the Department of Mysteries, Harry noted. That can't be coincidence. It gets worse, Ron continued. Blackwood's gone. What? Harry and Hermione exclaimed simultaneously. Not escaped, Ron clarified. Transferred. Apparently, the Department of Mysteries filed special paperwork claiming jurisdiction over his case due to his former employment. They moved him to their holding facilities last night. And nobody thought to inform the Auror office? Harry asked incredulously. The paperwork only surfaced this morning, Ron said with obvious frustration. Robards is furious, but it's all technically within protocol. Harry connected the dots immediately. The faction within the department has Blackwood now. And suddenly we have Earth current disturbances targeting ministry wards. We need to split up, Hermione concluded. Cover the disruption sites while also investigating what's happening at the ministry. Harry nodded. Ron, take a team to the Cornwall site. Hermione, you and Luna check Orkney, her intuitive approach might spot things conventional analysis would miss. I'll handle London and coordinate with Elder Caius from the Arcanum to monitor the broader current system. And I will inform the Arcanum Council, Alicia said. If this escalates, we may need to mobilize more of our members. Before separating, Harry pulled Ron and Hermione aside. Be extremely careful. Whoever's doing this understands primal magic well enough to manipulate the currents. Standard spells might behave unpredictably near the disruption points. What exactly should we look for? Ron asked. Physical anchors, Harry explained. Based on what we saw at the wellspring, they'll need material objects to channel and redirect the currents, crystals, metal constructs, runic arrays. And if we find them? Hermione asked. Harry considered this. Destroying the anchors might release the built-up magical energy all at once, potentially causing more harm than the controlled disruption. Don't dismantle anything until we're coordinated, he decided. Document everything and establish containment wards to prevent further spread. I'll try to develop a safe neutralization approach once we know what we're dealing with. They departed with grim determination, each understanding the potential consequences of failure. As Ron and Hermione headed to their assigned locations, Harry made a quick stop at Grimmauld Place to collect additional equipment he might need, specialized detection instruments from his Auror kit, protective gear, and several potions Creature had prepared specifically for working with volatile magic. The house elf appeared as Harry was preparing to leave, bearing a small wooden box. Master will need this, he announced, presenting it to Harry. Black family magic for earth troubles. Inside the box lay a small silver compass unlike any Harry had seen before. Instead of cardinal directions, its face showed flowing patterns that shifted constantly. It shows true flow of magic beneath feet, Creature explained. Helps wizard find where currents are wounded. Harry thanked the elf, genuinely touched by his continued support. The magical tools and knowledge of the old wizarding families, often dismissed as dark or outdated, frequently proved invaluable when dealing with ancient magic. It was another reminder of how much had been lost in the push towards standardization. The London disruption point was centered in an abandoned underground station that had been magically sealed decades ago when construction threatened to expose a minor magical community nearby. Harry gained access through ministry channels, his Auror credentials still opening doors despite the growing tension between his official position and his extracurricular magical research. The disused platform was thick with dust and forgotten Muggle advertisements, but Harry's magical senses immediately detected the disturbance. Using Creature's compass, he followed the disrupted current to its focal point, a maintenance tunnel that had been converted into something very different. The narrow passage now housed a sophisticated magical apparatus. Crystalline rods had been driven into the floor and ceiling at precise intervals, creating a lattice that intercepted the natural earth current flowing beneath. At the center stood a more complex structure, a silver framework containing what appeared to be a rotating orb of liquid darkness. Harry approached cautiously, using the detection spells from Ravenclaw's grimoire to analyze the construction without touching it. The device was clearly designed by someone with extensive knowledge of both primal magic and modern magical theory, the work of a trained unspeakable. Most concerning was the orb of darkness. It wasn't merely absorbing the earth current's energy but actively inverting it, transforming its natural properties into something foreign and discordant. The process reminded Harry of what happened when Dementors corrupted the natural magic of a location. As Harry completed his examination, he felt a shift in the magical atmosphere behind him. Someone had entered the tunnel, their magical signature deliberately muted to avoid detection. "I expected you sooner, Mr. Potter," came a cool, cultured voice. Harry turned slowly, wand ready but not raised aggressively. A tall, thin wizard stood blocking the tunnel exit. His grey robes bore no insignia, but the silver hourglass tattoo visible on his wrist confirmed Harry's suspicions, one of the Department of Mysteries faction. "You have me at a disadvantage," Harry replied calmly, assessing potential escape routes and tactical options. "Hyperion Rookwood," the man supplied with a slight incline of his head. "Augustus was my uncle. I believe you encountered him during the unpleasantness with the Dark Lord." Harry maintained his neutral expression despite his surprise. Augustus Rookwood had been a Death Eater and unspeakable, executed after the war for his crimes. The family connection explained much about the current situation. "You're causing dangerous disruptions to the earth currents, Mr. Rookwood," Harry said, deliberately keeping his tone professional rather than accusatory. "Whatever your goal, the magical instability threatens innocent people." Rookwood smiled thinly. "A controlled demonstration of vulnerability, nothing more. The wizarding world needs to understand how fragile our artificial magical systems have become, how dependent we are on standardized spells that can be disrupted with the right adjustments. And you're positioning yourself to offer solutions once people are sufficiently frightened?" Harry surmised, recalling his earlier theory. "Not myself," Rookwood corrected. "A return to proper magical education. The Department of Mysteries has preserved knowledge of primal magic for centuries while the rest of wizard kind grew increasingly dependent on simplified, limited magical forms." The parallels to Blackwood's philosophy were striking, though Rookwood's approach seemed more calculated and political where Blackwood's had been driven by academic obsession. "You've extracted Blackwood from Ministry custody," Harry noted, watching for reactions. "Is he working with you now?" Something flickered across Rookwood's face, annoyance, perhaps. "Blackwood is, consulting on certain technical aspects. His practical understanding of current manipulation is useful, despite his regrettable lack of discretion." "And these devices?" Harry gestured to the apparatus behind him. "Creating magical instability to prove a point seems reckless for someone concerned with proper magical practice." "Controlled instability," Rookwood emphasized. "Precisely targeted to affect specific systems without causing broader harm. Once the demonstration is complete, we'll restore normal flow." Harry wasn't convinced. The disruption he could feel in the current was growing more pronounced by the minute, the natural harmony increasingly discordant. Either Rookwood didn't fully understand the consequences of his actions, or he was lying about his intentions. "I need to neutralize this device," Harry stated firmly. "Whatever point you're trying to make, this method endangers too many people." Rookwood's pleasant demeanor cooled. "I'm afraid I can't allow that, Mr. Potter. The demonstration must proceed according to schedule. In approximately 3 hours, the reversal nodes will reach synchronization, temporarily suspending standard magical functions in key locations. Once the ministry acknowledges the vulnerability, negotiations for educational reform can begin. That's your plan? Magical blackmail? Harry couldn't keep the incredulity from his voice. Political leverage, Rookwood corrected. Sometimes institutions require dramatic evidence before accepting necessary change. Harry had heard enough. The device behind him was growing more unstable by the minute, and he needed to neutralize it before attempting to address the other disruption sites. "I'm going to dismantle this apparatus," he said with quiet authority. "You can either help ensure it's done safely or try to stop me. I don't recommend the second option." Rookwood's hand moved to his wand, but he didn't draw it immediately. "You don't understand what you're interfering with, Potter. This goes beyond just today's demonstration or even educational reform. The department has been working toward a fundamental realignment of magical practice for generations. Using methods that endanger the public," Harry countered. "That's where I draw the line." Rookwood sighed as if disappointed by Harry's lack of vision. "We had hoped you might eventually join our efforts. Your natural affinity for primal magic is remarkable, exactly the kind of talent that should be nurtured under proper guidance rather than wasted on aura duties." "I'm flattered," Harry replied dryly. "But I'll pass on the job offer." In one fluid motion, he drew the Founder's wand, deciding the situation warranted its superior capability with primal magic. Rookwood's eyes widened in recognition, confirming that the department faction knew about the wand's existence. "The Wand of Foundations," Rookwood breathed. "So it's true. You found the vault." "Last chance," Harry warned, the wand warm and responsive in his hand. "Help me safely neutralize this device." Instead of drawing his own wand, Rookwood pressed a small silver object in his palm. "Contingency activated," he stated clearly, and disappeared with a distinctive displacement of air that wasn't quite apparition, something more akin to the Arcanum's portal transportation. Harry cursed under his breath. Rookwood had escaped, likely to alert his colleagues at the other disruption sites. Worse, the contingency activation had caused an immediate response in the apparatus behind him. The orb of darkness was now pulsing rapidly, drawing more aggressively on the earth current. He sent his Patronus with urgent messages to Ron and Hermione, warning them of possible resistance and the likelihood of accelerated timelines at their locations. Then he turned his full attention to the device before him. Direct dismantling seemed increasingly risky. The orb's pulsing had taken on an erratic pattern that suggested instability. Instead, Harry decided to try a different approach based on Hufflepuff's techniques for working with, rather than against, natural energies. Drawing on the earth current sensing spell he'd practiced extensively, Harry mapped the flow being disrupted by the device. The natural current was being forced into a counterclockwise spiral when its natural movement was a gentle northeasterly flow. Rather than attacking the apparatus directly, Harry positioned himself at a specific point in the disrupted flow pattern and began a subtle working from Hufflepuff's grimoire, Flumen Reconcilio, designed to gradually realign disturbed currents without forcing them. The spell manifested as a soft golden glow that spread from the Founder's wand into the surrounding air, then sank into the ground. Harry maintained steady concentration, visualizing the natural flow pattern and encouraging the current to remember its true path. Slowly, the violent churning began to calm. The orb's pulsing slowed as the current it was attempting to invert gradually slipped from its influence. Harry increased the power to his spell carefully, drawing more deeply on his connection to the earth magic while maintaining the delicate balance required. After nearly 10 minutes of intense focus, he felt the shift, the current suddenly remembered its natural course and surged back into proper alignment. The apparatus shuddered, crystals cracking as the power they had been channeling abruptly withdrew. The orb of darkness collapsed in on itself with a sound like a distant thunderclap, leaving the silver framework empty and inert. Harry maintained the realignment spell for several more minutes, ensuring the current had stabilized completely before releasing his magical hold. He was sweating from the effort. Primal magic required a different kind of concentration than conventional spellcasting, more meditative and holistic. With the immediate threat neutralized, Harry collected key components of the device for later analysis and sent updated Patronus messages to his team. The London node was down, but they still had two others to address, and now Rookwood and his allies knew they were being opposed. As Harry exited the abandoned station, his communication charm activated, Hermione's voice coming through with urgency. "Harry, the Orkney site is heavily guarded, at least 5 unspeakables. Luna's creating a distraction, but we can't get close enough to examine the device." "How did you neutralize yours?" "I realigned the current rather than attacking the device directly," Harry explained quickly. "Hufflepuff's Flumen Reconcilio spell. But it requires getting within about 20 feet of the disruption center." "That's going to be difficult," Hermione replied, the sound of spellfire audible in the background. "They're not holding back." "Hold position," Harry decided. "I'm heading to you now. Ron, what's your status in Cornwall?" Ron's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Similar situation. 4 guards, sophisticated wards. We're maintaining surveillance but can't breach without risking casualties." Harry thought quickly. Taking on both sites sequentially would take too long. According to Rookwood, synchronization would occur in less than 3 hours. They needed a different approach. "Change of plans," he announced. "Everyone fall back to secure positions. Meet at the vault in 30 minutes. I have an idea, but we'll need help from the Arcanum and access to the Founder's original working tools." Back at Gringotts, Harry found not just Ron and Hermione waiting, but an expanded team including Luna, Elder Caius, Alicia, Director Grimstone, and surprisingly, Professor McGonagall. "The disruptions are affecting Hogwarts wards," McGonagall explained tersely when Harry raised an eyebrow at her presence. "The castle's oldest enchantments are becoming unstable. As headmistress, I consider this a direct threat to student safety." "We're glad to have you," Harry assured her. "Your expertise with transfiguration might be exactly what we need." He quickly outlined what he discovered at the London site and his encounter with Rookwood. Then he shared his developing plan. "Direct confrontation at each site will take too long and risk casualties on both sides," he explained. "Instead, I propose a centralized approach, using the vault's connection to the Founder's magic to create a temporary stabilization field across all major current systems." "Is that possible?" Hermione asked, intrigued despite the crisis. "The currents cover hundreds of miles. With conventional magic, no," Elder Caius acknowledged. "But the vault exists at what might be called a privileged position in the current network. The Founders chose this location specifically because it sits at an intersection of 7 major flows." "Precisely," Harry confirmed. "And the crystal map sphere in the side chamber suggests they designed the vault with monitoring and potential intervention capabilities for the entire British current system." "But we've never activated those functions," Alicia pointed out. "The theoretical understanding exists in the Arcanum's records, but the practical application would be unprecedented." "We don't need to perfectly restore the currents immediately," Harry clarified. "We just need to prevent synchronization of the disruption nodes long enough to neutralize them individually." He turned to the grimoires, opening Ravenclaw's text to a section detailing the magical architecture of Hogwarts Foundation. The Founders created a school that could adapt magically over centuries. They understood large-scale magical engineering better than anyone before or since. McGonagall stepped forward, examining the diagrams with professional interest. "These are similar to the foundational schemas in the headmaster's restricted archives, models for creating self-sustaining magical systems. And potentially for interventions when those systems are disturbed," Harry suggested. With growing excitement despite the pressure of time, they developed a plan using elements from all 4 grimoires. Ravenclaw's theories on magical connections provided the framework. Hufflepuff's earth magic offered techniques for gentle realignment. Slytherin's binding methods would prevent further deterioration while they worked. And Gryffindor's protective magic would shield the vault and its occupants from potential backlash. "We'll need to modify the crystal sphere chamber," Harry explained, sketching a diagram based on combined insights from the grimoires. "Transform it from passive monitoring to active intervention. That would require remarkable transfiguration work, McGonagall noted, studying Harry's sketch. Changing not just physical structure but magical properties. That's where you come in, Professor, Harry acknowledged. Between your expertise and Luna's intuitive understanding of magical resonance, I think we can adapt the chamber successfully. Director Grimstone, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. Such modifications to a historical chamber within Gringotts would normally be absolutely forbidden. He paused, then continued with reluctant determination. However, Goblin records confirm the founders designed certain chambers with adaptation capability. I will authorize the work, under my direct supervision. With roles assigned, they moved quickly to the crystal chamber. McGonagall and Luna began the delicate process of magical transfiguration, altering the room's structure according to Harry's specifications drawn from the grimoires. Hermione and Elder Caius prepared the runic sequences needed to redirect and harmonize the magical flows. Ron coordinated with Auror teams in the field, positioning them to move against the disruption sites once the stabilization field activated. Harry worked with Alicia to prepare himself for the most challenging role, serving as the magical conduit for the entire operation. According to the grimoires, the founders had designed their most powerful workings to channel through a single coordinating wizard or witch, with others providing specialized support. The strain will be considerable, Alicia warned as they completed the preparations. You'll be connecting directly to multiple earth currents simultaneously. Even with the founder's wand, the magical drainage will be intense. I've been practicing, Harry assured her, though privately he shared her concern. His previous experiences channeling primal magic had been physically and magically taxing, and this would be on an entirely different scale. As McGonagall and Luna completed the chamber modifications, the room had transformed dramatically. The simple stone table now extended into a complex circular platform surrounded by 7 crystalline pillars. The sphere itself had expanded to float at eye level in the center, showing not just the current flows but their magical resonance patterns as well. It's beautiful, Luna observed, her silvery eyes reflecting the glowing magical patterns. The currents are singing to each other, but the disrupted ones are screaming. Director Grimstone examined their work with critical expertise. The magical architecture is sound, he concluded after thorough inspection. The vault is responding to the modifications as the founders intended. With less than an hour remaining before Rookwood's predicted synchronization, they took their positions. Harry stood on the central platform, Founder's wand extended toward the floating sphere. Around him, at each of the 7 pillars, stood his allies, each responsible for stabilizing a specific aspect of the magical working. Everyone ready? Harry asked, receiving nods of confirmation. Then let's begin. He started with Gryffindor's protective invocation, creating a spherical shield around the chamber that would contain any magical backlash. Next came Ravenclaw's connection spell, extending his magical awareness outward through the crystal sphere to the broader current network. The sensation was overwhelming, like suddenly hearing thousands of conversations simultaneously. Harry fought to maintain his focus, applying the mental discipline he'd developed through weeks of training with the grimoires. I can see them, he reported, voice strained with effort. 3 disruption nodes, just as we thought. The London one is neutralized, but Orkney and Cornwall are still active and beginning to harmonize with each other. Following the carefully prepared sequence, Harry initiated Hufflepuff's realignment magic, channeling it through the modified chamber. Golden light flowed from the Founder's wand into the crystal sphere, which amplified and redirected it into the current network. The map within the sphere responded immediately, the angry red disruption points flickering as the stabilization field began to counteract their influence. But Harry could feel resistance, active opposition from the devices and their operators pushing back against his efforts. They're fighting the realignment, he gritted out, sweat beading on his forehead. Actively reinforcing the disruption. The synchronization is accelerating, Hermione reported urgently from her pillar, where she monitored the magical harmonics. They must have activated some kind of contingency protocol. Harry felt the pressure building, not just magically but physically. His body was becoming a conduit for enormous energies, and despite his preparation, the strain was rapidly becoming unsustainable. We need to try something else, he decided, thinking quickly despite the mounting pressure. Direct opposition isn't working. In a moment of inspiration drawn from his conversations with Blackwood, Harry changed tactics. Instead of fighting against the disruption directly, he began working with it, accepting the altered flow temporarily while subtly guiding it in a circular pattern that would eventually return to its natural state. "What are you doing?" Elder Caius asked with alarm. "The protocol requires direct counteraction." "Trust me," Harry managed, focusing intensely on the delicate magical manipulation. "Sometimes you have to bend before you can straighten." The sphere's display shifted dramatically as Harry's new approach took effect. Instead of directly opposing the red disruption points, the golden stabilization field now flowed around and through them, creating complex spiral patterns that gradually dissipated their harmful resonance. "It's working," Luna announced with quiet certainty. "The currents are remembering themselves." Harry could feel the difference. The resistance had lessened as his subtle approach confused the opposition's defenses. Rather than a head-on magical battle, he was engaged in something more akin to a dance, responding to the disruption's movements with complementary steps that ultimately led where he wanted to go. The red glow of the Cornwall disruption point began to fade, its enforced pattern dissolving as Harry's indirect realignment took effect. Orkney followed moments later, the distorted currents gradually returning to their natural flows. "Field teams report the devices are deactivating," Ron called from his position. "The crystals are going dark." Harry maintained the working for several more minutes, ensuring the currents had truly stabilized before carefully withdrawing his magical influence. As he lowered the Founder's wand, his legs buckled beneath him, the strain finally overcoming his endurance. Alicia and McGonagall caught him before he hit the floor, easing him gently to a sitting position on the platform. Harry's entire body trembled with magical exhaustion, but his mind remained clear enough to recognize their success. "Did it work completely?" he asked, voice hoarse from effort. "Perfectly," Hermione confirmed, examining the now calm sphere. "All currents returning to natural patterns." The synchronization failed. "And Rookwood?" "Aurors have secured both remaining sites," Ron reported with satisfaction. 3 suspects in custody at Cornwall, 4 at Orkney. "No Rookwood, though." Harry nodded, not surprised that the mastermind had evaded capture. "He'll try again. Different approach, same goal. But we'll be better prepared next time," Elder Caius noted. "This experience has provided valuable insights into both the vulnerability and resilience of the current network." Director Grimstone approached with what might have been grudging respect. "The vault chamber responded to your modifications as if they were anticipated. The Founders apparently designed for this contingency." As Harry recovered enough strength to stand, supported by Ron and Hermione, a new magical signature appeared at the chamber entrance, a shimmering portal similar to the Arcanum's transportation method but with subtle differences. Through it stepped a wizard Harry had never seen before, elderly but standing straight, wearing robes of midnight blue embroidered with silver stars that seemed to move independently of the fabric. His beard was shorter than Dumbledore's had been but equally white, and his eyes held the same quality of seeing beyond the immediate. Everyone in the chamber, including Alicia and Elder Caius, tensed at his arrival. "Archmagus Pendleton," Alicia acknowledged with a formal bow that stopped short of subservience. "Speaker Vance," the newcomer returned with equal formality. His gaze moved to Harry, assessing rather than challenging. "And Harry Potter, who has rediscovered what was hidden and prevented what was planned." "Who exactly are you?" Harry asked directly, feeling Ron and Hermione shift protectively closer to him. "I hold the title of Archmagus in the Concilium Magici," the old wizard explained, as if this should clarify everything. When he saw Harry's blank expression, he added, "An organization that predates even the Arcanum, young man. We observe the broader patterns of magical development across continents and centuries." "Another secret society?" Harry couldn't keep the exasperation from his voice. The Archmagus smiled slightly. The oldest, though we prefer custodial order to secret society. We intervene rarely and only at pivotal moments in magical history. He gestured to the now stabilized crystal sphere. What you've accomplished today represents such a moment. Harry exchanged glances with his friends, sensing this conversation would lead to yet another layer of complexity in an already complicated situation. Why are you here now? Because you stand at a crossroads, Mr. Potter. The knowledge you've rediscovered, the Founder's understanding of primal magic, has remained dormant for centuries by design, not accident. Pendleton moved further into the chamber, examining the modifications they'd made with experienced eyes. Its re-emergence now is significant, but how it returns to the magical world matters greatly. The Concilium believes it should remain restricted, Harry guessed, feeling a flare of preemptive resistance. Quite the contrary, Pendleton corrected. We believe it must be reintegrated, but thoughtfully, systematically, with proper preparation of the magical community. What Rookwood and his faction attempted was reckless acceleration. What Blackwood sought was uncontrolled release. Neither approach serves the greater balance. This aligned surprisingly well with Harry's own developing thoughts on the matter. That's why the Founders sealed this knowledge in the first place, isn't it? Not to hide it forever but to preserve it until it could be properly reintroduced. Precisely. The Archmagus looked pleased. Godric, Helga, Rowena, and Salazar recognized that their standardization of magical education would gradually distance wizard kind from the primal currents. But they also understood this was necessary for magical society's growth and stability. A temporary separation, Alicia added, with eventual reconciliation intended. Hermione's eyes widened with academic excitement. That's why the vault opened to Harry specifically. The grimoires weren't looking for just any heir but someone positioned to guide this reintegration properly. Harry felt uncomfortable with this implied destiny but couldn't deny the logic. His unique experiences had given him perspectives most wizards lacked, raised Muggle but immersed in wizarding culture, formally trained but frequently forced to improvise, an Auror who questioned authority, a leader who understood both light and dark magic. What exactly are you proposing? He asked the Archmagus cautiously. A controlled, phased reintroduction of primal magical understanding to the wizarding world, Pendleton explained. Beginning with educational reform at Hogwarts, extending to specialized training for adults in key positions, and gradually expanding to broader magical practice. With the Concilium overseeing everything, I assume, Harry noted skeptically. Pendleton smiled. With a coalition overseeing the process, including the Arcanum, select ministry officials, Hogwarts leadership, and most importantly, those who rediscovered the Founder's legacy. He gestured to Harry and his friends. Your perspectives are essential precisely because you aren't bound by centuries of established doctrine. It was a compelling vision, not keeping the knowledge restricted to an elite few, but neither releasing it haphazardly. A middle path that honored both magical traditions while ensuring safety and proper understanding. There are others who will resist, Harry warned, thinking of Rookwood and potentially other factions yet to reveal themselves. Those who want to control this knowledge exclusively or use it for their own purposes. Indeed, Pendleton acknowledged gravely. Which is why we must move forward deliberately but without unnecessary delay. The knowledge has awakened, it cannot be simply reburied. As they discussed next steps, Harry found himself drawn back to the crystal sphere, which now showed a harmonious network of currents flowing beneath Britain. The Founders had created this monitoring system specifically to track the health of magical Britain's foundation, the earth currents that ultimately powered all wizarding infrastructure. A thought struck him. The vault isn't just a repository for knowledge, he realized aloud. It's a management system for Britain's magical infrastructure, a control room for the currents that power everything from Hogwarts wards to the Ministry's protective enchantments. Director Grimstone nodded slowly. That would explain why the Founders established it beneath what would become Gringotts, a neutral territory respected by all magical factions. And why it responded to you specifically, Alicia added. As the person who most embodies balanced magical potential in this generation. Harry was still uncomfortable with the implication of being chosen, but he couldn't deny the evidence before him. The vault, the grimoires, the Founder's wand, all had responded to him in ways that suggested more than coincidence. "I'm willing to help with this reintegration," he decided finally. "But it needs to be truly collaborative, not controlled by any single group, not the Ministry, not the Arcanum, not the Concilium." Spoken like a true heir to Godric's seat, Archmagus Pendleton observed with apparent approval. Balanced through representation rather than centralized authority. Over the next few hours, they developed the framework for what would become known as the Foundation's Accord, an agreement between various magical stakeholders to guide the responsible reintegration of primal magical knowledge into modern wizarding society. McGonagall would oversee curriculum development at Hogwarts, introducing age-appropriate concepts of earth magic and current sensing to students ready for such understanding. Ron would liaise with the Auror Office, developing specialized training for law enforcement to recognize and respond to primal magic phenomena. Hermione would coordinate research efforts, ensuring academic rigor in testing and documenting the reintroduced magical techniques. The Arcanum would provide historical context and training resources, while the Concilium offered broader perspective and diplomatic connections to magical communities beyond Britain. Gringotts, represented by Director Grimstone, would maintain the vault as a neutral study center accessible to approved researchers from all participating groups. As for Harry, his role would be both practical and symbolic, demonstrating the integration of primal and modern magic through his developing mastery of both traditions. The Founder's Wand served as a physical representation of this bridging, designed specifically to work with both approaches harmoniously. "There's still the matter of Rookwood and his faction," Harry reminded them as plans solidified. "They won't simply abandon their agenda because we've countered this attempt." "No, they won't," Archmagus Pendleton agreed. "And there are other groups watching these developments with great interest, some benevolent, others less so. Then we maintain vigilance while proceeding with implementation," Harry decided. "The best defense against those who would misuse this knowledge is ensuring proper understanding becomes widespread enough that manipulation and fear tactics no longer work." As evening approached, the expanded team dispersed to their various responsibilities. The immediate crisis had been averted, but much work remained to address its underlying causes and prevent similar attempts in the future. Harry returned to Grimmauld Place exhausted but with newfound clarity about the path forward. The Founder's grimoires weren't just historical artifacts but active guides for navigating the reintegration of magical traditions that had grown apart over centuries. Kreacher greeted him with a knowing look and a steaming mug of restorative potion. "Master has touched the old magics deeply today," the elf observed. Kreacher can see the glow still in his skin. Harry glanced at his hands, noticing the faint golden luminescence that lingered after intensive work with primal magic. "Is that normal, Kreacher?" "For those who speak with earth currents, yes," the elf confirmed. "The old families called it the touch of magic's favor. It fades after rest." As Harry sipped the restorative, a thought occurred to him. "Kreacher, the Black family must have worked with primal magic in the past. There are references to it in some of the books in the library." The elf nodded. "The most ancient and noble house of Black knew the old ways. Not all forgotten, just kept private." He gestured around them. "This house sits on a minor current junction. Why ancestors chose this location?" Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Many old wizarding homes and institutions were positioned at specific magical locations, not randomly but with deliberate awareness of the earth currents. This knowledge hadn't disappeared entirely but had become specialized, restricted to certain families and traditions often dismissed as outdated by modern magical society. The integration won't be starting from zero, Harry realized. The knowledge has been preserved in fragments across different magical communities. We just need to reconnect the pieces. His musings were interrupted by the arrival of a Patronus, Luna's hair bouncing through the wall with her dreamy voice carrying an urgent message. "Harry, something's happening at Hogwarts. The castle is awakening. McGonagall needs you immediately." Despite his exhaustion, Harry gathered his strength and apparat to Hogsmeade, then made his way quickly up to the castle. The sight that greeted him was extraordinary. Hogwarts was literally glowing, every stone illuminated from within by a soft golden light identical to the earth current magic he'd been working with. McGonagall met him at the entrance, her typically composed demeanor shaken. "It started an hour ago, after I returned from the vault. The castle's oldest enchantments are activating independently, passages appearing that haven't been seen in centuries, portraits speaking in languages none of our linguists recognize, and the foundations." She gestured wordlessly toward the ground beneath them. Harry extended his magical senses as Alicia had taught him and nearly staggered at what he felt. Massive currents of primal magic were flowing through Hogwarts' very foundations, awakening enchantments that had lain dormant since the Founder's time. "The stabilization we performed didn't just prevent Rookwood's synchronization," he realized. "It rebalanced the entire current network, including the major junction beneath Hogwarts. The castle is recalibrating itself," Luna explained, appearing beside them with her typical unconcerned air despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Remembering its original enchantments now that the currents are flowing properly again." They made their way to the Great Hall, where staff and prefects were managing increasingly confused students. The enchanted ceiling had transformed from its usual reflection of the outside sky to a swirling representation of magical currents flowing throughout Britain, similar to the vault's crystal sphere but vastly more detailed. "It's beautiful," Hermione breathed, having arrived just after Harry. "The Founders must have created this as an educational tool, showing the students how magic naturally flows through the landscape." Ron, who had come directly from coordinating with Auror teams, looked up with practical concern. "Is it safe, though? All these old enchantments suddenly reactivating?" Harry extended his senses further, feeling the quality of the magic flowing through the castle. "It feels balanced. Harmonious. The castle isn't just remembering its original enchantments, it's adapting them to its current state." McGonagall nodded slowly. "Hogwarts has always been semi-sentient, responding to the needs of students and staff, creating rooms that weren't there before, adjusting itself over centuries. But this is a more fundamental awakening." As they watched, the swirling currents in the ceiling stabilized into a clear pattern centering on 4 distinct flows that corresponded to the 4 house tables below. Each house's section of the ceiling now displayed a different aspect of magical current interaction, Gryffindor showing protective applications, Hufflepuff displaying nurturing patterns, Ravenclaw demonstrating analytical frameworks, and Slytherin revealing binding and focusing techniques. The Founder's original teaching model, Hermione realized. Each house wasn't just about personality traits but different approaches to working with magical currents. Which became increasingly symbolic as the direct connection to primal magic faded from the curriculum, Harry added, pieces falling into place. Eventually, the houses became more about values than magical approaches. The awakening wasn't limited to the Great Hall. Throughout the evening, reports came in of changes throughout the castle, training rooms appearing with equipment designed for current manipulation, the library reorganizing to reveal previously hidden sections on primal magical theory, and most dramatically, for new doors appearing in the headmaster's tower, each leading to what appeared to be the personal workrooms of the Founders themselves. "It's as if the castle is preparing for the reintegration before we've even formally begun," McGonagall observed as they examined Ravenclaw's newly revealed workroom, filled with complex magical instruments and walls covered in theoretical diagrams. "The Founders built this anticipation into Hogwarts itself," Harry suggested. Once the currents were properly rebalanced, the castle would automatically begin preparing to teach the integrated approach again. The discovery of the Founders' workrooms provided another breakthrough, each contained additional notes and tools that complemented the grimoires from the vault. Ravenclaw's room held detailed curriculum plans for progressively teaching current manipulation to students of different ages and aptitudes. Hufflepuff's contained extensive documentation on working with magical beings and creatures through shared connection to natural energies. Slytherin's revealed sophisticated techniques for binding and directing primal forces through ritualistic frameworks. And Gryffindor's offered practical applications for protective and defensive magic drawing on earth currents. "This is extraordinary," Hermione said, carefully examining Ravenclaw's curriculum notes. With these resources, we can develop a comprehensive educational approach that integrates primal and structured magic safely and systematically. As they continued exploring the Awakening Castle, Harry felt a pull toward a specific location, the foundation stones in the deepest accessible part of the dungeons. Following this intuition, he made his way down rarely used staircases until he reached what appeared to be a dead end. Except it wasn't. To his magically enhanced perception, the wall before him pulsed with earth current energy flowing up from below. Acting on instinct, Harry placed his hand against the stone and spoke the activation phrase from Gryffindor's grimoire, Revelio Fundamentum. The wall dissolved, revealing a chamber Harry had never seen referenced in any text about Hogwarts, not even the Marauder's map had shown it. At the center stood a simple stone table supporting a miniature model of Hogwarts itself, perfect in every detail and glowing with the same golden light as the actual castle above. As Harry approached, the model responded to his presence, sections becoming transparent to reveal the complex network of magical currents flowing through the castle's structure. It was a three-dimensional control system for Hogwarts' foundational magic, similar to the vault's crystal sphere but specific to the school. "The Heartstone Chamber," came a voice from behind him. Archmagus Pendleton stood in the doorway, observing with quiet approval. Few headmasters ever find this room, even after years of service. The castle reveals it only to those who understand both its structured and primal aspects. "You knew it was here," Harry said. "It wasn't a question." "The Concilium maintains records of all major magical constructions," Pendleton acknowledged. "Though we haven't had access to this chamber in several centuries. The castle is selective about who it admits." Harry turned back to the model, noting how it showed not just the physical structure but the magical resonances of every part of Hogwarts. "This is how the founders monitored and adjusted the castle's magic as it developed. And how you and your colleagues will guide its reawakening," Pendleton added. "Hogwarts was always intended to evolve, to incorporate new magical understanding while maintaining connection to its foundations." Over the following days, Harry divided his time between Hogwarts, the vault, and coordinating with various groups involved in the Foundation's accord. The initial crisis had been resolved, but the work of reintegration was just beginning. Rookwood remained at large, but intelligence from captured members of his faction suggested his immediate plans had been disrupted by the failure of the synchronization attempt. This provided a window of opportunity to establish the reintegration framework before facing additional opposition. A week after the awakening of Hogwarts, Harry found himself back in the Ministry holding cells, facing Blackwood across the magical barrier. The former Unspeakable had been returned to regular custody after Rookwood's faction was exposed, and he looked both better and worse than during their previous meetings, physically healthier but with a haunted expression suggesting difficult experiences during his brief time in Department of Mysteries custody. "They tried to force information from me," Blackwood explained without preamble. "About the vault, the grimoires, your activities. When I resisted, they used methods the official ministry would never sanction." "Why resist?" Harry asked, genuinely curious. "You've never hidden your desire to see primal magic released widely." "Because their approach is wrong," Blackwood replied with unexpected conviction. "They don't seek understanding or balance, just control. Different masters, same chains." Harry studied him thoughtfully. Despite his methods, Blackwood's core motivation, the belief that magical knowledge shouldn't be restricted, aligned in some ways with the integration they were now planning. "We're implementing a controlled reintroduction of primal magical concepts," Harry informed him. "Starting with education, expanding gradually to broader practice." Blackwood's eyes widened with genuine surprise. "You're actually doing it? Not just studying the grimoires but sharing the knowledge?" "With appropriate safeguards," Harry qualified. "Systematic education rather than uncontrolled release." "Cautious but progressive," Blackwood mused. "More than I expected from someone trained by the ministry." His gaze sharpened. "What role do you see for those of us who preserved this knowledge when others forgot it? The researchers dismissed as fringe, the practitioners labeled dangerous." It was a fair question. People like Blackwood, despite their flawed approaches, had kept interest in primal magic alive when mainstream magical society had moved entirely to standardized forms. Consultation, initially, Harry replied honestly. Your theoretical understanding is valuable, especially in identifying potential issues during reintegration. Beyond that would depend on demonstrated commitment to balanced approaches. Blackwood considered this, clearly weighing his options. I could provide significant insights from my research, particularly regarding the interaction between primal currents and modern magical constructs. Areas where conflicts might arise during reintegration. That would be helpful, Harry acknowledged. I'll speak with the Wisengamot about modifying your sentence to allow supervised research collaboration. As he left the ministry, Harry reflected on how much had changed in the weeks since discovering the hidden key. His understanding of magic itself had transformed, expanding beyond the structured spellcasting of his Hogwarts education to encompass the more fluid, intuitive approach of primal magic. More importantly, he'd come to see that these weren't competing systems but complementary aspects of magical practice that had been artificially separated. The founders hadn't abandoned primal magic when creating standardized education, they had preserved it for eventual reconciliation when magical society was mature enough to handle both approaches. That evening, Harry returned to the vault beneath Gringotts, now transformed into a research and coordination center for the Foundation's Accord. Representatives from participating groups worked together cataloging the grimoire's contents, developing educational materials, and planning the phased reintroduction of primal magical concepts. Hermione had established a systematic approach to testing each rediscovered spell, documenting its interactions with modern magical theory before approving it for broader teaching. Luna led a team exploring the implications for magical creature relations, having discovered that many beings naturally perceived and worked with primal currents in ways wizards had forgotten. Ron coordinated security, ensuring that dangerous applications were properly controlled while maintaining transparency about the project's goals and methods. The secrecy that had historically surrounded primal magic had contributed to fear and misunderstanding. Openness would be essential for successful reintegration. As Harry moved through the vault, observing the collaborative work underway, he felt a deep sense of rightness. This was what the founders had intended, not hiding knowledge but preserving it until it could be properly shared and integrated. The founder's wand, now a constant companion, hummed with approving energy at his thoughts. Harry had come to understand its unique properties, not more powerful than his Holly wand in raw terms, but more versatile, capable of working equally well with structured spells and primal manipulations. Like the wand, Harry himself had become a bridge between magical traditions, trained in modern techniques but increasingly fluent in primal approaches. This dual perspective would be essential for guiding others through the reintegration process. At the center of the vault, the four grimoires now rested on a single integrated pedestal rather than separate stands, symbolic of the reunification underway. Harry approached them, drawn by a subtle magical pull he'd come to recognize as the book's semi-sentient awareness. Opening Gryffindor's grimoire to a section he hadn't previously studied, Harry found a passage that seemed written for this moment. When the time comes for reunion of what was divided, the true test shall not be in the power unleashed but in the wisdom that guides it. Magic at its core is neither light nor dark, neither structured nor wild, it simply is. How we approach it, with what intent and understanding, determines its manifestation in our world. The separation we have created between approaches was never meant to be permanent but protective, allowing magical society to develop stability before reincorporating the deeper currents from which all magic flows. When the heir of two houses rediscovers what we have hidden, it signals that the preparation is complete and the reconciliation may begin. This path requires neither blind preservation of tradition nor reckless pursuit of power, but thoughtful integration that honors both the structure we have built and the primal foundation upon which it stands. As Harry read these words, written 1,000 years earlier yet speaking directly to their current situation, he felt a profound connection to the founders and their vision. They hadn't just been creating a school or standardizing spells, they had been setting in motion a long-term plan for magical evolution, one that would unfold across centuries. The key finding its way to him hadn't been coincidence but the culmination of that plan, the right person at the right time to guide the reintegration they had always intended. Not because of prophecy or special power, but because his unique experiences had given him the perspective needed for this specific challenge. With this understanding came both responsibility and freedom, responsibility to ensure the reintegration proceeded carefully, with proper safeguards and education, but also freedom from feeling that he alone must control or protect this knowledge. The founders had designed for collaboration, for shared wisdom guiding the process. In the months that followed, the Foundation's Accord moved from concept to implementation. At Hogwarts, McGonagall introduced an elective course for 6th and 7th years on Foundational Magical Theory, teaching the basic principles of Earth current awareness. The Awakened Castle supported this curriculum with its newly revealed training spaces and resources. The Ministry established a special division bridging the Department of Magical Education and the Department of Mysteries, focused on researching and documenting primal magical applications. Under Hermione's guidance, they developed training programs for adults in key positions, aurors, healers, magical infrastructure specialists, who would most benefit from integrated magical approaches. The Arcanum shifted from secretive guardianship to open educational role, sharing their preserved knowledge through carefully structured programs available to qualified practitioners. The Concilium provided international coordination, ensuring that the British reintegration efforts harmonized with similar awakening interests in magical communities worldwide. Not everyone embraced these changes. Conservative elements within the ministry resisted what they saw as dangerous experimentation. Some pureblood families objected to making previously exclusive magical knowledge widely available. And Rookwood's faction continued sporadic attempts to accelerate the process through destabilizing actions, though these were increasingly countered by the growing network of practitioners trained in both magical traditions. Despite these challenges, the reintegration progressed steadily. Each successful application built confidence in the approach. When a team of aurors trained in primal techniques safely contained a magical outbreak that would have overwhelmed conventional methods, skeptics in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement began to reconsider their opposition. When St. Mungo's healers incorporated earth current sensing into diagnostic procedures, revealing previously undetectable magical ailments, the medical community embraced the expanded toolkit. 6 months after discovering the vault, Harry stood with his closest allies on the astronomy tower at Hogwarts, watching as the castle grounds below glowed softly with the natural magic of summer solstice. The earth currents were particularly active tonight, visible to their trained perception as golden streams flowing across the landscape. "It's really happening," Hermione observed, looking out over Hogwarts where students practiced basic current sensing under professor supervision as part of the solstice celebration. "The reintegration. It's working." "Better than I expected," Ron admitted. "Thought there'd be more resistance from the old guard." "People respond to results," Harry noted. "When they see the practical benefits of integrated approaches, theoretical objections fade." Luna, who had been unusually quiet, spoke dreamily. "The currents are happier now. They've missed being noticed." She turned to Harry. "The blibbering humdingers say you've done exactly what the founders hoped for." Harry smiled, long accustomed to Luna's unique way of expressing insights that often proved surprisingly accurate. "I've had help," he reminded her, looking around at the friends who had supported this journey from the beginning. As night deepened, they made their way down to join the solstice gathering on the grounds. Students, staff, centaurs from the forest, representatives from the ministry and various magical organizations, all participating in a celebration that honored both structured magical traditions and the newly reawakened connection to primal currents. Professor Flitwick led an impressive display of conventional charms, creating dazzling light patterns above the crowd. This was followed by a demonstration from Alicia and Elder Caius, who showed how similar effects could be achieved through direct current manipulation, with distinct advantages in responsiveness and duration. Most powerful was when the approaches combined, McGonagall transfiguring stone into intricate sculptures while Harry used primal magic to infuse them with earth current energy, creating statues that moved and changed in response to the magical atmosphere around them. The integration they demonstrated wasn't just technical but philosophical, different approaches to magic coexisting and complementing each other rather than competing for dominance. It embodied the vision the founders had preserved in their grimoires and built into Hogwarts itself, a magical practice that honored both innovation and foundation, structure and fluidity. Later that night, Harry returned alone to the Heartstone chamber beneath Hogwarts. The miniature castle glowed brightly, reflecting the active magical celebrations above. But Harry had come for a different purpose, to complete a working he'd been preparing for weeks. Drawing the Founder's wand, he began a complex spell combining elements from all four grimoires: Gryffindor's protective framework, Ravenclaw's analytical precision, Hufflepuff's harmonizing resonance, and Slytherin's binding stability. The magic manifested as multicolored light flowing from the wand into the miniature castle, then spreading outward through the model's representation of earth currents. This working would establish what the grimoires called a concordance network, a self-sustaining pattern within Britain's magical currents that would maintain balance between primal and structured magical influences. Not controlling either approach but ensuring they remained in productive dialogue rather than harmful opposition. As the spell took effect, Harry felt the castle itself respond, not just the stone and mortar but the semi-sentient magical presence that had developed over centuries of absorbing the magic of thousands of students and teachers. Hogwarts recognized what he was attempting and contributed its own ancient power to the working. The model castle briefly shone with blinding light, then settled into a steady glow that pulsed in perfect rhythm with the natural heartbeat of the earth currents. The concordance was established, not permanent, as it would require periodic renewal by future practitioners, but stable enough to support the continuing reintegration for years to come. As Harry completed the working, he sensed another presence in the chamber, not physical but magical. For a brief moment, he could almost perceive four distinct signatures observing his work with what felt like approval. Then they were gone, leaving only a lingering sense of completion. Whether it had been his imagination or some echo of the Founders themselves preserved in Hogwarts magic, Harry took it as confirmation. The path they had set in motion a millennium ago was unfolding as intended, not exactly as they might have envisioned, perhaps, but in alignment with their fundamental purpose. The reawakening of primal magic wouldn't be without challenges. Rookwood and others with their own agendas would continue to pose threats. The magical community would face growing pains as it adapted to expanded possibilities. Educational systems would need continuous refinement to properly teach integrated approaches. But the foundation had been established. The grimoires were no longer hidden away but actively informing the evolution of magical practice. The earth currents flowed in balance with structured magic rather than separate from it. And throughout magical Britain, witches and wizards were beginning to remember a deeper, more intuitive connection to the magic that had always surrounded them. As Harry left the Heartstone chamber, he carried with him not just the Founder's wand and centuries of rediscovered knowledge, but a vision for magical practice that transcended artificial divisions, a magic that was both disciplined and free, structured and intuitive, traditional and evolving. The vault beneath Gringotts would remain a center for research and coordination, but its primary purpose had been fulfilled. What had been hidden had been found. What had been separated was being reunited. And the magical world was awakening to possibilities that had lain dormant for centuries, guided by the wisdom of those who had come before and the courage of those who would shape what came next. In his office at Grimmauld Place, Harry carefully placed the Founder's wand on a special stand between his Holly wand and the Elder wand he had never used but kept secure. 3 approaches to magic, conventional, primal, and something beyond both, represented in physical form. He wouldn't need to choose between them. The lesson of the grimoires, of the Founder's legacy, was that magic at its best embraced multiplicity, different paths serving different purposes, all contributing to a richer, more resilient whole. As Harry stepped back, the Founder's wand emitted a soft golden glow that spread to encompass the other 2 wands, then faded gradually back into dormancy. Like the magical traditions they represented, the wands weren't in competition but in conversation, distinct voices in a harmony that was only now being fully heard again after centuries of partial silence. Outside, the summer night pulsed with magical potential, both the structured enchantments that protected and defined the wizarding world and the primal currents that flowed beneath, around, and through all things. Harry extended his magical senses, feeling both aspects clearly for the first time, not as separate systems but as complementary expressions of the same fundamental force. The journey that had begun with a hidden key had led to the unlocking of much more than a physical vault. It had opened a path toward a more complete understanding of magic itself, a reconciliation of traditions that honored both structure and primal power, both discipline and intuition, both the foundations built by those who came before and the innovations yet to be discovered. And in that balance, Harry recognized, lay magic's truest expression, not as a tool to be wielded or a force to be controlled, but as a living reality to be understood, respected, and engaged in partnership. The founders had known this. Now, after 1,000 years, the wizarding world was remembering it too. The lost spells hadn't really been lost, just waiting to be rediscovered when the time was right for their return. That time had come, not through prophecy or predetermined destiny, but through the choices and actions of those who sought understanding rather than power, integration rather than dominance. As dawn approached, Harry felt the currents shift subtly with the changing light, a harmony of natural rhythms and magical resonances that had always been there but that he could now perceive and appreciate fully. The world hadn't changed, but his relationship to it had, expanded to embrace both the structured magic of his formal education and the primal currents that flowed beneath all magical practice. In this expanded awareness, Harry recognized the true legacy of the Vault of Foundations, not just spells or knowledge but a way of relating to magic itself that transcended artificial divisions and returned to the fundamental unity from which all magical approaches ultimately sprang. The reintegration had begun. The path forward would have challenges, but the foundation was solid. And in the balance between traditions, primal and structured, intuitive and analytical, ancient and modern, lay the future of magical practice, richer and more resilient for embracing the full spectrum of magical possibility. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.